Chapter 830. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. The white cloth on the red tasseled spear was removed by Gu Jiao, and it flew into the wind. The spearhead shone with a cold light under the hot sun. The red tasseled spear that was identified as a whip was like the blood from the enemy's heart. It was a shocking red. Nan Gong's sword directly chopped down on Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear, creating a crisp sound of collision. His sword was a treasured sword made of black iron. It was incomparably sharp and indestructible. Not to mention a red tasseled spear, even if it was a piece of pig iron, he would be able to split it in half. But what shocked Nan Gongza was that the ugly red tasseled spear was actually unharmed. Did it withstand my sword? No. It should be that this brat blocked his killing move. He used a large amount of Qing Gong and internal energy to complete this move. He saw the scene of Gu Jiao pulling out her spear to block, but he didn't care. This was because he had absolute confidence that he could break Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear and slash her body. Nan Gongza was above Gu Jiao's head and forcefully pressed down on the long sword in his hand. Gu Jiao looked at him calmly. She suddenly leaned back and raised her left leg, kicking towards Nan Gongza's head. Nan Gongza held his sword in his right hand and was facing off against Gu Jiao. He could only use his left hand to block, but this position was extremely awkward. In addition, his left hand wasn't his dominant hand, so he didn't have enough strength. His entire body was kicked out by Gu Jiao. Nan Gongza almost fell under the hooves of the Black Wind Cavalry. Fortunately, he managed to stabilize himself in time. His long sword touched the ground, and he used the momentum to flip and stabilize himself in the chaos. His left arm that blocked Gu Jiao's kick began to feel slightly numb. This brat's strength was terrifying. And what was with the red tasseled spear in his hand? Why? Did it look a little familiar? Where did you get your red tasseled spear? Nan Gongza asked coldly. As he spoke, a soldier from the Nan Gong family was kicked to the ground by a Black Wind Cavalry. Seeing that his throat was about to be pierced by the Black Wind Cavalry spear, he swung his sword at the Black Wind Cavalry. Clang! Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear blocked his sword. The cavalryman was slightly startled, but his movements were not affected. It was as if they had cooperated thousands of times before. Under Gu Jiao's protection, he stabbed the Nan Gong rebel to death. Don't say that we are all from the Great Yen Kingdom. Rebels are rebels. It is the mission of the Black Wind Cavalry to purge the rebels. Nan Gongza did not care about his soldiers as much as Gu Jiao did for the Black Wind Cavalry. If they died, so be it. They still had more soldiers. However, this made him even more curious about Gu Jiao. How could he be so gifted at such a young age? Gu Jiao did not intend to talk nonsense with Nan Gongza. Nan Gongza recognized that the armor she was wearing was Xin Yuanli's armor, but he did not recognize that her red tasseled spear was Xin Yuanli's weapon. She was not good at martial arts and was blind. She had been a spy in the Xin Yuan army for so many years. Gu Jiao stepped on the stirrups and jumped onto the horse's back. She turned in the air and slammed her spear down heavily at Nan Gongza. Nan Gongza's pupil shrank. The 7 styles of Xin Yuan. This was the Xin Yuan family's spear technique. The youth was holding Xin Yuan Li's red tasseled spear. How could it be? Who are you? He swung his sword to block the red tasseled spear above his head. He held the sword hilt with one hand and the blade with the other. He used all his internal energy to block the youth's attack. Gu Jiao immediately followed up with a second strike at lightning speed. With a crisp crack, Nan Gongza's black iron sword was broken by the youth's red tasseled spear. Nan Gongza's eyes widened in disbelief. Gu Jiao did not give Nan Gongza any time to catch his breath. She quickly stabbed her spear again. Behind her, Chung Fugue was forced down from his horse by a rebel from the Nan Gong family in order to save his companions. The rebel cut his left shoulder with a sword. Damn you! He turned his head and stabbed the rebel with his spear. As soon as the rebels fell, even more rebels surged forward. "Kill their horses!" Someone in the rebel army shouted, and everyone changed their direction of attack. They didn't want to fight the cavalry head-on, but instead, they slashed at the Black Wind cavalry that they were riding. The Xianyuan Steel Cavalry was the bravest war horse in the Six Nations. They were trained to protect their masters and did not care about their own safety. As long as the cavalry did not stop, they would continue to fight. They would not retreat because of swords and sabers, and would not cower because of injuries. Chung Fugui watched as the Black Wind cavalry fell one after another. His eyes were bloodshot. "Damn it! How dare you kill our mounts? Give me your life!" The battle between two armies was not a duel between individuals. Everyone was killing each other, and people could be injured or killed at any time. The Black Wind cavalry was at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers. Any small victory that was bought with a huge price or sacrifice would be considered a failure. Gu Jiao had to end the battle as soon as possible. Nan Gongzhe, who had lost his weapon, got on his horse and took a spear from a Black Wind cavalry. Gu Jiao deftly flicked his spear away. The Black Wind King raised his front hooves and charged towards Nan Gongzhe's horse with a murderous aura. Nan Gongzhe's warhorse was so frightened that it fled. Its entire body stood upright. Nan Gongzhe cursed angrily and fell from the horse's back. He rolled a few times and coincidentally saw a long sword in front of him. His eyes lit up and he hurriedly reached out to pick it up. Gu Jiao's spear pierced over and nailed his palm to the dusty ground. Gu Jiao said, "I said that the first battle must see blood. The blood of the traitors shall be used to pay tribute to the dead souls of the Xianyuan family." Gu Jiao held the red-tasseled spear and pressed it down. "Ah!" Nan Gongzhe let out a shrill cry. After tasting the blood of the traitors, the red-tasseled spear seemed to shine even brighter. Endless fighting spirit reverberated throughout the battlefield. The morale of the Black Wind cavalry was greatly boosted. Gu Jiao pulled out the red-tasseled spear and kicked Nan Gongzhe unconscious. On the battlefield, it was not individual strength that mattered, but teamwork. Although Nan Gongzhe's martial arts were not as good as in Hun's, he was not weak in a real battle. If Nan Gongzhe had not targeted Gu Jiao so much today and had wholeheartedly led the rebel army to arrange the troops, he would not have lost so thoroughly. Of course, Gu Jiao's age made it easy for people to underestimate her. Who would have thought that a teenager could defeat the fierce general of the Nangong family? After Nan Gongzhe was captured alive by Gu Jiao, the rebel army's morale was in chaos. The Black Wind cavalry took advantage of the victory and killed almost all of the rebel army. Gu Jiao asked Chung Fugui to keep a few of them alive. "Go and tell the head of the Nangong family that I, Xiao Lulang, am here. I'm the one who killed his second son, Nan Gongli. Now I've captured his third son, Nan Gongzhe. If he wants to redeem his son, use Tsuyang City as an exchange. Otherwise, I'll chop off his son's head and hang it on the Black Wind camp's flagpole." When they thought of that inspiring scene, all of the Black Wind cavalry raised their weapons. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" Their shouts shook the heavens and the clouds. The few remaining rebel soldiers were so frightened by this monstrous aura that they trembled all over, their faces filled with fear. Gu Jiao waved her spear and said seriously, "Also, if the Nangong family does not surrender, I'll attack Tsuyang City and kill every single one of them." Report, report. In the governor's mansion, the head of the Nangong family was sitting in the parlor and playing with his grandson. When he heard the soldier's anxious voice, he asked the servant to carry his 3-year-old grandson away and summoned the soldier. When the head of the Nangong family asked with a sullen face, he was a little unhappy that his family's happiness with his grandson was interrupted. The soldier knelt on one knee and said anxiously, "Governor, the third master has been captured." The head of the Nangong family's eyes turned cold. He pressed his palm on the armrest and stood up. "What did you say? Who has been captured? Who has captured him?" The soldier cupped his hands and said, "The third master has been captured by Xiao Lulang from the Black Wind camp." Xiao Lulang said that if you want to redeem the third master, use Chuyang City as an exchange. He also said, the head of a Nangong family gripped the armrest tightly and said through gritted teeth, "What else did he say?" The soldier said in fear. He also said that if the governor doesn't surrender, he will attack the city and kill all the people of the Nangong family. The head of the Nangong family slapped the chair. "Bastard." "Father." The eldest son, Nangong Chung, quickly walked into the parlor. "I just came from the city tower. I heard that the third brother has been captured." The head of the Nangong family was so angry that his whole body trembled. "Xiao Lulang. It's that Xiao Lulang again." Nangong Chung was shocked. "It's him?" The head of the Nangong family suppressed his anger and closed his eyes. "I told him to bring more soldiers, but he didn't listen." Nangong Chung didn't reply. Actually, it was impossible to bring more soldiers. The mission of the third brother and the fourth brother was to lure the Black Wind camp out of the mountain. If the third brother and the fourth brother had brought more soldiers, the cavalry of the Black Wind camp wouldn't have come out of the mountain to rob the provisions. Moreover, their target was Xiao Lulang. Whether it was the third brother or the fourth brother, they would capture him alive if they could. If they couldn't, they would kill him. Nan Gongcheng frowned. "I didn't expect this Xiao Lulang to be so powerful." The first day he appeared, the third brother fell into his hands. "I wonder how the fourth brother is doing?" The head of the Nangong family said, "Your fourth brother didn't encounter Xiao Lulang, so he should be fine for now. You should think about how to save your third brother." "Grandfather." A woman in red armor walked in with a solemn expression. She cupped her hands and bowed to the head of the Nangong family and Nangong Chung. "Grandfather, uncle, please allow me to bring the soldiers to save my father." If Gu Jiao was here, she would definitely recognize her. She was Nangong Jing, the daughter of the third branch of the Nangong family, who wanted to drag fifth Master Han down at the cost of her own reputation during the selection of the Black Wind camp's commander. As the daughter of a general, Nangong Jing was also quite skilled in martial arts. "Grandfather, I'll go too. I want to take revenge for my father." Nangong Li's youngest son, Nangong Lin, also rushed in with a murderous aura. Nangong Chung said in a deep voice, "Stop fooling around. Go back to your rooms." Even your father wasn't a match for Xiao Lulang. Do you really think you can take advantage of him? Nangong Chung and the head of the Nangong family were a little angry at the mention of this. They already knew that this Xiao Lulang was a fake. He wasn't 19 years old. From his appearance, he was only 16 or 17 years old. However, he was already so capable. Before Xiao Lulang appeared, the Nangong family had always been proud of their juniors. They thought that they were young and capable, and that their achievements in the future would definitely be greater than their elders. However, after Xiao Lulang appeared, their children suddenly weren't as good. Was the difference between people that big? "Leave," the head of the Nangong family said in a deep voice. Now that they were in troubled times, it was inevitable that the head of the Nangong family's temper was more irritable than before. Nangong Lin and Nangong Jing were stunned by the scolding. They looked at each other and left unwillingly. Nangong Chung consoled him, "Father, please calm down first. I'll think of a way to save third brother." The head of the Nangong family said bitterly, "This person is ruthless. Your third brother will definitely suffer a lot in his hands." Nangong Chung thought for a while and said, "Father, I think there's still room for negotiation. He didn't kill third brother and wants to negotiate with us. It's obvious that he doesn't have enough troops to fight against our army in the city. Why don't we beat him at his own game and call Xiao Lulang to Chuyang City in the name of negotiation and wait for an opportunity to kill him?" The head of the Nangong family said coldly, "How do you know that you're not inviting a wolf into the house? Xiao Lulang is so cunning. Once he enters the city and incites the people in the name of the Xianyuan army, the consequences will be unimaginable. We'll kill him outside the city. Go and call Changwei here." Nangong Ching asked, "Father, You want General Chang Wei to fight against Xiao Luleng? The head of the Nangong family said coldly. Chang Wei is the most capable subordinate of the Nangong family. He's skilled in martial arts and is brave and good at fighting. Over the years, there have been many wars at the border, but he hasn't lost even once. Ask him to bring all the troops in the city. He must kill all the Black Wind Cavalry. Although the Black Wind Cavalry only had 20,000 soldiers, it was the most powerful army in the Great Yen Dynasty. It was also the first army that the Xianyuan family established. The Xianyuan family relied on the Black Wind Cavalry to dominate the 6 states. Later on, they slowly built their own archery unit, infantry unit, and chariot unit. In order to extinguish the fighting spirit of the 3 armies, they must first eliminate the Black Wind Cavalry. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that you can't find on the internet are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/105870447. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 831. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. In Phone County, on the official road that was used to transport the provisions, there had just been a battle. Thick blood mist filled the entire open space. Chung Fugue's arm was hanging with gauze, directing the soldiers who were not injured to count the provisions. Probably because the city was really short of provisions, so the provisions this time were all real. This was a great harvest. This was an unprecedented war, and it would not end easily. It was always right to stock up more provisions. It was not good to stay here for a long time. Gu Jiao took 4 medical officers to treat the injuries of the injured soldiers. Bear with it for a while. Gu Jiao said to a soldier whose arm was dislocated. The soldier nodded. Gu Jiao put his arm back in place. Then she took gauze from the small medicine box and wrapped it around his neck. Just like Chung Fugue, his arm was hung around his neck. After that, Gu Jiao treated the next soldier. She pulled out the sword, disinfected, stopped bleeding, stitched up, and put gauze on the wound. After counting the provisions, the soldiers rested on the spot to recover their strength. But Gu Jiao could not rest. There were no hospital beds here. All the soldiers were lying on the ground. She could only kneel and treat everyone. The cold, hard armor rubbed her knees. She knelt in front of a wounded soldier, covered in blood. This wounded soldier was very young. He had just joined the army this year. His family was poor. In order to treat his grandfather's illness, he joined the army. He had the talent to be a soldier. Chung Fugue took him back to the Black Wind camp. My leg. He looked at his injured and swollen leg. His eyes suddenly had tears of fear. This was the first time he went to the battlefield. It was also the first time he faced serious injury and death. It won't be crippled. It will be cured, Gu Jiao said to him. Really? He asked with a choked voice. Gu Jiao said, yes, really. But you have to be obedient. Don't make noise. Don't cry. He stopped his tears in a second, fearing that he wouldn't be able to recover if he cried too much. Gu Jiao took out the anesthetic and applied local anesthesia on him. Then, she used a scalpel to cut open his skin and used a pair of tweezers to pick out the broken sword fragments bit by bit. The wounded soldier did not dare to look at Gu Jiao's movements. He turned his head away and closed his eyes tightly. The rest of the cavalry couldn't help but look over. To be honest, the new commander-in-chief's performance today was somewhat beyond their expectations. Nangong Zhe was famous for being a fierce general at the border. He had personally led the troops to escort the rations and waited for the Black Wind cavalry to jump in. At that moment, they were actually very worried that this little commander would drag them down. At that time, they thought, "Little commander, can you go play for a while? Wait until we've robbed all the provisions. Then you can come back and claim the credit, okay?" They had the mood of an adult coaxing a child, hoping that the little commander would not come out and cause trouble. Who knew that the little commander would be so fierce, nailing Nangong Zay's palm to the ground with a spear. At that moment, they all had goosebumps all over their bodies. This feeling was like you thought you had a cat, but in the blink of an eye, it turned out to be a little cheetah, and it even bit the big-tailed wolf that you were afraid of to death. A cavalry soldier whispered to the squad leader beside him, "That I almost got hit by the sword just now, but the little commander blocked it for me." If it wasn't for the little commander's spear, he was afraid that his injuries would be worse than Gooden's. Gooden was the name of the wounded soldier. The cavalry soldier secretly sized up Gu Jiao as he continued to whisper, "Squad leader, don't you think the little commander is quite powerful?" The squad leader was about to say something when Gu Jiao seemed to have sensed something and looked over. Everyone quickly averted their gazes. Some looked up at the sky, while others scratched their feet. When Gu Jiao went to treat the wounds of the wounded soldiers, everyone's eyes fell on her again. Gu Jiao had already gone to treat the next wounded soldier. This wounded soldier had fainted. After being saved by Gu Jiao, he saw Gu Jiao holding a syringe in her hand and screamed in fright. Gu Jiao pricked his buttocks with a needle. Disobedient. Humph. There was a deep and sealed wound on his body. Gu Jiao gave him a tetanus shot. Everyone stared at Gu Jiao without blinking. Did the little commander snort just now? When the little commander was fierce, why did she look a little cute? At this moment, Gu Jiao ran out of blood-staunching powder. She took a new bottle from the small medicine box, but when she tore it open, her nose itched and she sneezed. Achoo! Her small body trembled, and the white powder splashed on her face. She stared dumbfoundedly at the blood-staunching powder that was half gone. She was in so much pain that her expression cracked. Damn! Someone couldn't help but cry out. Everyone clutched their hearts. They couldn't take it anymore. The little commander was a little too cute. The Nangong family's rebel army could attack at any time, so they could only treat them urgently. They had to wait until they reached a safe place to put them on drips. After Gu Jiao and the medical officers finished treating all the wounds, the 2,000 soldiers set off back to the canyon. The cavalry was very curious about what had happened just now. A few of them were brave enough to call out to a medical officer. The leader of the cavalry asked, "The little commander knows medicine? Did you guys teach her?" The medical officer smiled and said, "You're wrong. Our medical skills were taught by Lord Shao." What? The cavalry was dumbfounded. The medical officer marched with the troops. He had seen how Gu Jiao was treated in the Black Wind camp during this period. She was so young and had such a heavy responsibility, but she was still ostracized by a group of men. But the cavalry couldn't be blamed. The previous commanders of the Han family had bitterly disappointed them. However, this newly appointed commander was different from the Han family. The medical officer explained, "We're lacking in the treatment of external injuries. Every day, after you rest, Lord Shao will call us to his tent and teach us how to treat external injuries, including how to use the medicine and tools he gave us." There's actually such a thing. A cavalry muttered, "I've seen it once or twice when I was patrolling. I thought the little commander was afraid of death and always asked the medical officer to check his pulse." The medical officer smiled and said, "Lord Zhao's medical skills are brilliant. We can't compare to him." They trained in the Black Wind camp all day, so they didn't know that Gu Jiao had treated the crown princess. Another cavalry said in surprise, "So our little commander not only knows how to fight, but also knows how to treat people. He used us." He didn't even realize that he had used a nickname that belonged to his own people. The others didn't seem to find anything wrong with this nickname. "Why aren't we leaving?" Gu Jiao looked back at the people who were still whispering behind. Everyone quickly straightened their expressions and urged their horses to follow. Gu Jiao had chosen a place to set up camp before she left. It was at the foot of a mountain 3 miles away from a canyon, backed by a small forest. The reserve camp had already moved here. The tents were set up and dinner was ready. Gu Jiao let the injured soldiers return to their tents to recuperate. The injured Black Wind cavalry were also taken away for treatment. As for the food they robbed, it was handed over to Zhang Shiyong and Zhou Run, the 2 commanders of the reserve camp. Li Jin and Tong Zhong of the assault camp came to Gu Jiao's tent and reported the situation of the ambush in the canyon. Very good. Gu Jiao nodded. Have the soldiers eaten dinner? Yes, Li Jin said. Gu Jiao said, once it gets dark, the Nangong family's rebel army will take action. Everyone must be prepared for battle. Yes. The 2 men cupped their fists in response. My lord, who is this person? Advisor who ran over anxiously. He looked at Nangong Zhe, who was tied up and thrown on the ground. Rebel army? Nangong Zhe. Gu Jiao said. Advisor who was shocked. Nangong. Nangong Zhe? The 3rd master of the Nangong family. My lord, you captured him? We kept him as bait. Gu Jiao clapped her hands and no longer cared about Nangong Zhe on the ground. Instead, she looked at Li Jin and Tong Zhong. Based on your understanding of the Nangong family, who will they send to lead the troops tonight? Li Jin thought for a moment and said, Chang Wei. Tong Zhong said, either Chang Wei or Nangong Sitsi. Gu Jiao said, Nangong Sitsi has gone to deliver another batch of food. Mu Qingchen is leading them in a roundabout way. They won't be able to come tonight. She was talking about Mu Qingchen, not Zhao Lei. Logically speaking, Zhao Lei was the commander of the Black Wind cavalry. Mu Qingchen did not have an official position. Zhao Lei should be the one leading them in a roundabout way. However, she was close to Mu Qingchen. The 2 of them thought that she was just talking about Mu Qingchen out of habit and did not take it to heart. That leaves only Chang Wei. Tong Zhong's expression suddenly turned serious. If it's Chang Wei, we'll be in trouble. He's harder to deal with than Nangong Sitsi. He's a real fierce general. Gu Jiao said casually, we'll know if he's fierce or not after the battle. Night fell. Chang Wei was dressed in armor. He led an army of 80,000 soldiers out of Tsuiyang City and headed toward Feng County in the east. This army was well equipped. There were archers, cavalry, infantry, and heavy chariots. It was obvious that they were going to fight the Black Wind cavalry to the death. Chang Wei was born in a poor family. He became a fierce general on the border with his strength. He was very experienced in battle. He had his own way of dealing with the invincible Black Wind cavalry. When the army was 3 miles away from the valley, Chang Wei called for them to stop. General? His deputy general looked at him in confusion. Chang Wei looked at the valley in the night. It was like the mouth of a giant beast. He said calmly, they will definitely set up an ambush in the valley. The deputy general looked at the valley that reached into the clouds. He said, it's indeed a good place to set up an ambush. General, what do you plan to do? Chang Wei said, take a group of people and feign an attack. Force them to attack. When they've used up all their ambushes, retreat. I have a plan. Digression Jiao Jiao. For every cause, there must be an effect. Your brilliant plan is me. JPG. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_8964286/105869008. HTML Genius, memorize this website's address. www.zhpqg.com Bikaj mobile reading website. zhpqg.com. Chapter 832. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. At dusk, the entire Black Wind camp entered a state of preparation. They packed up and set off. Nangongze was tied to a wooden stake in the camp. He woke up an hour ago. He thought he would be tortured, but he wasn't. The men left him alone after they tied him up. His injured palm was wrapped in gauze. The wound must have been treated because there wasn't a lot of blood seeping out. He frowned deeply as he watched the cavalrymen come and go and fight in front of him. He was tied very close to the Black Wind camp's commander's tent. With his hearing, he could hear the conversation inside. He knew there would be a fierce battle tonight and knew what the Black Wind camp had prepared. If he could tell Nangong Jun the Black Wind camp's battle plan, he would be able to take down the Black Wind camp effortlessly. Unfortunately, that kid tied him up with iron chains. He couldn't break free at all. He tried to lure the cavalry over and coax them to take him to see the Black Wind camp's commander. That way, he could find a chance to escape. But he shouted so many times that the horsemen who came and went in front of him seemed to be deaf. Damn it. Nangongze gritted his teeth. He had to find a way to leave this place. He couldn't let the Black Wind camp use him to threaten Nangong Jun. Just as he was racking his brains for a way to escape, he saw Gu Jiao come out of her tent with a helmet. He hurriedly said, "Xiao Lulang, what trick are you playing this time? Do you think you can make my father surrender to you by capturing me? I'm warning you, you better give up. My father will never bow down to you for me." Gu Jiao said to advisor, who followed her out, "Remember to put more water and cook it slowly." Advisor, who nodded, "Yes, I'll remember." Zhang Shiyong. Gu Jiao called the reserve camp's left commander, who came back with a newly hunted animal. "There's no time to dry a few baskets of herbs. Find a few people to roast them." "Yes," Zhang Shiyong replied. Gu Jiao called a few more people over and gave them instructions one by one. She only walked over unhurriedly when Nangongze's face was as black as charcoal. Hugging her helmet, she looked down at Nangongze, who was in a sorry state, and asked, "What's the matter?" Nangongze hated the feeling of looking up at him, but if he did not look at him, it would seem that he was afraid of him. Nangongze looked up and said coldly, "You won't succeed. My father won't exchange the entire Tsuyang city for me." Gu Jiao. Oh. Gu Jiao's calm reaction made Nangongze even angrier. He was obviously a brat who was still wet behind the ears, but no matter what he did, he was so calm. He gritted his teeth and threatened, "Also, you won't succeed. You only have 20,000 cavalrymen, while my Nangong family has 80,000 soldiers. Your little tricks are nothing in the face of an 80,000-strong army. Xiao Lulang, it's not too late for you to regret. Send me back obediently. Kowtow to my father 3 times and pledge allegiance to the Nangong family. Maybe we can spare your life. Are you done?" Gu Jiao tilted her head and looked at him fearlessly. "You're not very eloquent." After saying that, she walked away with a little disdain. The army was ready to set off, and the medical officers followed with medicinal herbs and fragrances. People would constantly get injured during a war, so the presence of medical officers was very necessary. The huge camp was emptied in an instant, leaving only the soldiers of the reserve camp and the injured soldiers who were transported back from the front line in the afternoon. Nangongze stopped looking around and frowned in confusion. Xiao Lulang had really left. He didn't bring her along. This was too strange. If he was Xiao Lulang, what would he do when the two armies were facing each other? He would use him, the legitimate son of the Nangong family, as a shield so that the Nangong army would not dare to act recklessly. Could it be? He's thinking that if he loses, he'll use me as a last resort? No, I can't let Xiao Lulang succeed. I must escape. The sky became gloomier and gloomier until it was completely dark. On the mountain peaks on the east and west sides of the canyon, the Black Wind camp's cavalry, who were almost one with the night, lay in ambush. Li Jin was lying on the edge of a rock on the east peak, closely watching the movements below the canyon. On the west peak opposite him, Tong Zhong was also constantly vigilant. Behind the two of them were the cavalry in their respective positions. Everyone was ready to deal with the Nangong army that could appear at any time. Li Jin pressed his ear to the ground. Suddenly, he felt a vibration on the slope of the mountain. Someone was coming. To be exact, a large group of people was coming. Li Jin blew a cuckoo's call, and Tong Zhong responded with 2 cuckoo's calls. Both sides reached a tacit agreement and raised their right hands together. The sound of horse hooves approached from afar, mixed with the sound of armor rubbing against each other. In the silent mountain range, it sounded like a battle. The moon was good tonight. The armor reflected the cold light, and the sound of horse hooves echoed in the valley. They were close to the canyon. 10 zhang, 7 zhang, 5 zhang. Li Jin suddenly pressed down with his hand. Drop. The 20 cavalry behind him used the wooden sticks in their hands to pry open the huge rocks one by one. The rocks rolled down from the craggy mountain, creating a thunderous sound. The Nangong army that had charged into the canyon was smashed by the rocks, and their formation was instantly disrupted. Wails of pain intertwined. Tong Zhong was not willing to be outdone. He suddenly lit the trench behind him, released the arrows. The Black Wind Camp had the highest requirements for their soldiers, and their training was also the most comprehensive. Not only were they good at fighting on horseback, they were also good at fighting infantry, archery, and formations. Their arrowheads were dipped in kerosene, and after they were lit in the trench, the scorching flames covered the sky as they shot towards the rebel army in the canyon. The rebel army did not have any strength to fight back, and fell down in a clatter. The vice-general was stunned. Even though he knew that they were here to die, he did not expect them to die so quickly. Xiao. An arrow flew over, and the vice-general quickly leaned back to dodge it. The arrow flew past his nose. The tip of his nose was still hot from the kerosene, and he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. But he could not retreat. He gripped the reins tightly and pulled out the sword at his waist. Charge. Kill them all. The space on the mountain was limited, so it was impossible for everyone to hide up there. The Black Wind Camp's main force must be hiding in front of the canyon. As long as they charged over, they would be able to fight them. Large rocks and logs kept rolling down from the peak of the canyon, and the kerosene arrows burned the entire canyon. When the Nangong army charged through the canyon, they had already lost more than half of their forces. The vice-general's heart was bleeding. Even if they wanted to die, they did not want to die. So many. Fortunately, they had already charged through the canyon. Now, as long as they fought with the enemy, they would stop the ambush on the mountain to avoid hurting their own people. On the other side of the canyon, Chung Fugui saw that the Nangong army had already charged through the canyon. He tore off the bandage on his arm, pulled the reins, and pulled out his sword. Brothers kill. The Black Wind Camp's cavalry were like a surging tide as they charged towards the Nangong army with killing intent. Horses were timid by nature and were easily frightened. To train a horse into a proper war horse was an extremely difficult task. To train a horse into a Black Wind rider, other than the Xinyuan family, there was no other family that could do it. The Nangong family had also trained many good horses at the border. However, first of all, they were not as good as the Black Wind Cavalry, and second of all, there was a big gap in terms of training tactics. The Black Wind Cavalry were called the Death Soldiers of the Horse for a reason. The vice-general was already unable to remain calm. After exchanging blows with the enemy, he quickly gave the order to retreat. Chung Fugui excitedly shouted, "Brothers, charge! Kill them all! Don't let the rebels escape!" In terms of the speed of a war horse who could outrun the Black Wind Cavalry. Fortunately, General Chang Wei was already prepared. Fire! The vice-general shouted, and the rebels, under his command, all took out something and threw it on the ground. Then, the vice-general pulled out a kerosene arrow from the corpse of a rebel and threw it at those things. A series of shocking explosions could be heard. The black gunpowder blew up the valley into a land of thick smoke. Due to the limitations of the formula and manufacturing method, The explosive power of the black gunpowder was not very strong. It was mainly used in conjunction with sleeping gas and knockout drugs. Chung Fugui quickly pulled on the reins. Stop. Stop. Be careful. There are knockout drugs. This incident bought precious time for the vice general and the others. They managed to rush back to where the Nangong army was. The Black Wind cavalry chased after them relentlessly. Everyone could clearly hear Chung Fugui's cursing. Chang Wei saw that there were less than 500 people left and frowned. He never underestimated the enemy, but the strength of the Black Wind cavalry was still beyond his imagination. However, this was the end. After tonight, there would be no more Black Wind cavalry. After the last rebel stepped into the safe zone, Chang Wei ordered the soldiers on both sides of the road. Rise! The gloved soldiers on both sides each pulled a few transparent threads in their hands. With a whoosh, they ran to the opposite side and tied the transparent threads to the already nailed iron pillars on both sides. The pillars were also wrapped in the same cloth as the silver thread gloves. If Gu Jiao was here, it would not be difficult for her to recognize that this was the snowfield silk that appeared in the Yen Kingdom's palace. It was extremely sharp and could cut through anything. However, it couldn't see anything. When the Black Wind cavalry charged over, only pieces of meat would be left. On the other hand, they would pretend to be strong and let the elites swing their swords to make the Black Wind cavalry think that they were cut by the sword energy. This was the highest level of the art of confusing the enemy. The Black Wind cavalry, who did not know the truth, would keep charging forward, trying their best to kill the elites. However, even when the last cavalry fell, no one would understand that there were no elites. What killed was the invisible snow domain, heavenly silkworm silk. Charge, brothers. Charge. Kill these traitors. Chung Fugui's voice reverberated throughout the entire road. The Black Wind cavalry followed him without hesitation. The deputy general rode on his horse and stood beside his general. Looking at the cavalry of the Black Wind battalion, he coldly curled his lips and said, "General, you really are a genius. They have fallen into our trap." Chung Fugui urged his horse forward. His eyes shone with the excitement of killing the enemy. "I see it. The Nangong clan's rebel army is right in front. Brothers, charge." Chang Wei did not even bat an eyelid. Only pieces of meat could break through the snowfield silk. He did not need to instruct the archers to prepare, nor did he need to instruct the cavalry and infantry to listen to his orders. He only needed to make a hand gesture and let the elites start to pretend. That's right, the elites must stand high enough and be eye-catching enough for all the Black Wind cavalry to see. "Go up to the top of the pillar," he said. More than 10 elites used their qinggong and leaped onto the wooden pillar. Chung Fugui led his subordinates closer. They were turning a corner. Their figures were hidden by the slope in front of them. When they rushed out of the slope and onto the road, the hunt began. 3, 2, 1. The lieutenant counted silently in his heart. 3, 2, 1. He counted silently again. He looked at the pitch-black slope with a dumbfounded expression. "Can't you turn a corner and come out? Why are you still nowhere to be seen? Wait a minute." The sound of horse hooves was also gone. "General." The lieutenant looked at Chang Wei strangely. He could not understand what was going on. Soon Takashi frowned. Just a moment ago, they were so noisy that their heads were about to split open. How did they suddenly disappear without a trace in the blink of an eye? Did something happen behind the slope when they turned the corner? But it shouldn't be to the extent of suddenly. No. Something is wrong. Chang Wei turned around abruptly and looked at the Nangong clan's army behind him. Woo! A bugle horn suddenly sounded from behind the Nangong clan's army. It was like the opening of a huge battle in the dark night. Following that, someone beat the war drum. Dong, dong, dong. Every sound was like a roar from hell. The bugle horn sounded, the war drum beat, and the sound of horse hooves approached in unison. Even the sound of armor rubbing against each other was completely in sync. In the dark night, the flying eagle flag of the Xian Yuan family fluttered in the wind. The wind that came from the valley was like a dragon's roar, causing one's heart to tremble. The 20,000 yuan steel cavalry wore black armor and helmets. Even their horses were covered in black armor. Chang Wei's gaze was fixed on the young man leading the yuan steel cavalry. With just one look, Chang Wei recognized the young man from the Yuan family. It was not based on his appearance, nor his identity. It was based on the young man's murderous aura and wolf-like nature. Chang Wei instantly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. The young man pulled down the iron mask on his helmet, revealing only a pair of calm eyes. Attack! All the Yuan steel cavalry raised their hands and pulled down the cold masks on their helmets in unison. The hunt has begun. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels will be updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels will be read for free. All the novels that can't be found on the internet are available here. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_8964286/1058470089. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhpqg.com, Pen Fun Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhpqg.com. Chapter 833. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are available here. The shock and impact of this scene was extremely great. The dark mass of Black Wind cavalry was like boiling molten iron as they charged towards the 80,000 rebels of the Nangong family. There was a formation when an army fought. Usually, the archers and chariots would be at the front. When charging, the cavalry would be at the front while the infantry would be at the back. Tsun Takeshi's main battlefield was near the canyon, so the Nangong cavalry and chariots were naturally arranged there. According to the original plan, as long as the Black Wind cavalry encountered the snowfield silk, they would not have to do anything. The problem was he was not sure if the lieutenant could successfully lure the Black Wind cavalry over. If the lieutenant and the cavalry were killed in the canyon, the Black Wind cavalry would be waiting for them to attack the canyon. Then, the snowfield silk would not be of any use. Just in case, he still made this the main battlefield. This arrangement opened the door for the Black Wind cavalry and welcomed them to harvest their heads. Cavalry and infantry were not on the same level. Moreover, they were facing the most powerful Black Wind cavalry of the 6 nations. Tsun Takeshi did not need to look to know how many soldiers he would lose. Tsun Takeshi looked coldly at the lieutenant beside him. Didn't you see that they did not have many soldiers when you fought with them? Aye. The lieutenant was speechless. He was overwhelmed by the Black Wind cavalry's aura in the canyon and was scared out of his wits. He only wanted to leave as soon as possible, fearing that he would die in the hands of the Black Wind cavalry. He did not have the time to count how many soldiers they had. He waved his arm and pointed at the quiet hill. It's their commander. He's shouting too loudly. My head is buzzing. This was one of the reasons. Chung Fugue used his own strength to shout out the aura of thousands of soldiers and horses. It made people feel that he had all the Black Wind cavalry behind him. Soon Takeshi gritted his teeth. You haven't even seen the Black Wind cavalry's commander. How can you be sure that all the Black Wind cavalry are there? Aye. He was stunned by Chung Fugue's shouting. At this point, Tsun Takeshi could not tell that he had fallen into a trap. The ambush in the canyon was just a diversion. In fact, the main force of the Black Wind cavalry had already circled to the back of the Nangong army. The commander shouted and scolded, creating such a huge commotion to distract them, so that they wouldn't notice the main force of the Black Wind cavalry approaching from the other side. How did they come up with the idea of going around to the rear? Were they not afraid that the Black Wind Cavalry would be swallowed whole by the Nangong family's army? Unless the Black Wind Cavalry had already expected that they would not be able to pass through. Soon Takashi looked at the faintly discernible snowfield heavenly silkworm silk in front of him. Then he looked at the Black Wind Battalion cavalryman who suddenly hid behind the hill and stopped advancing. A bold guess suddenly formed in his mind. That young man had guessed that he would use this move. But how was that possible? Even the head of the Nangong family did not know that he had the snow domain heavenly silkworm silk. Who was this young man, and why did he know him so well? There was no time to think about this. Screams of agony could be heard from the back. The Black Wind Cavalry was killing people, as if they were taking candy out of a bag. If this continued, the army would be defeated. Find someone to dismantle the snow domain heavenly silkworm silk, he ordered his deputy general. This thing was not that easy to dismantle. It was impervious to fire, water, and weapons. In order to prevent it from slipping off, it was tied in a dead knot. Those wooden pillars were also specially made. This was what it meant to have a circle around the place. Soon Takashi was having a headache. He could only order his deputy general to dismantle it. He wanted to go around the sides and kill the Black Wind Cavalry who were hiding behind the hill, but he had chosen the best place to do so. There were lakes on both sides. How could he go around them? Should he dive? Soon Takashi endured the waves of dizziness and coldly pulled out his long sword. All cavalrymen, follow me to battle. Chariots, get ready. Archers, follow me. Chariots with archers were a good way to deal with cavalrymen. However, the chariots were too slow. He had to fight with the Black Wind Cavalry first. Soon Takashi took the lead and led the Nangong family's cavalrymen to pass through the infantry camp. The Nangong family's army was not weak. They had always followed the Xianyuan family's training method. However, this advantage was useless against the real Xianyuan family's army. The strength of the Xianyuan family's army was engraved in their bones. When the flying eagle flag fluttered in the wind, the heat wave that rolled through their chests was enough to burn their organs. Soon Takashi's participation allowed the Nangong family to regain some of their backbone. The defeated army gradually recovered under his command. However, this was still not enough to stop the Black Wind Cavalry from killing. The invincible Black Wind Cavalry was like a giant beast from the abyss. They were also like Asuras from hell. No rebel army could escape from their butcher's knife. Soon Takashi watched as his soldiers fell one by one. His eyes were bloodshot. On the other side, the deputy general was ordering a few soldiers to dismantle the snow domain heavenly silkworm silk. Weapons would not work. With one slash, the sword would break into two. Burning it with fire would not work either. He tried to cut the wooden pillar. However, the wooden pillar was harder than iron. It did not budge even after he cut it with his sword. Finally, the deputy general had an idea. Dig out the pillar for me. Swoosh. An arrow flew over and struck one of the Nangong soldiers, causing him to fall to the ground. The deputy general's eyes trembled. He quickly looked over and saw Chung Fugue, Li Jin, and Tong Zhong leading a large group of cavalry to shoot arrows at them. Whenever one came close to the pillar, they would shoot one. If two came close, they would shoot both. The deputy general raised a shield to block himself. He gritted his teeth and said, "Are you bullying us because we don't have archers?" F***CK. They really didn't. They were taken away by General Tsun Takashi. The situation on the battlefield was constantly changing. A moment of carelessness could lead to irreversible consequences. This was not to say that Tsun Takashi's ability to see the entire situation was not enough. It was just that Gu Jiao's appearance was the biggest variable in this battle. Tsun Takashi had seen countless people, but he had never fought with such an enemy. The other party seemed to be very familiar with his style, but he knew nothing about him. He originally thought that the other party was just a martial arts prodigy. Who would have thought that the other party was a talented commander? Tsun Takashi's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the young man who had killed countless Nangong soldiers. The young man was too ferocious. No one dared to get close to him. However, no one could escape from his hunt. Soon Takashi led the cavalry to surround Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao saw so many people charging at her, but there was no fear in her eyes. She grabbed the reins with one hand and the red-tasseled spear with the other. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. Go! Black Wind King's aura was fully unleashed. He sped up and charged into the Nangong army's cavalry formation. The Nangong family's war horses were frightened by Black Wind King. The cavalry formation that took a lot of effort to charge over was instantly scattered. Gu Jiao and Black Wind King chased after their prey. However, this was not the scariest thing. Soon Takashi wanted to kill Gu Jiao a few times, but he was stopped by the Black Wind cavalry. Then he discovered something unbelievable. These Black Wind cavalry looked like they were killing their own people. However, they were in an organized and planned way to drive the Nangong army toward the canyon. They surrounded the Nangong army, causing the frightened soldiers to have nowhere to run. They could only retreat with all their might. However, the result of retreating was soon Takashi turned around and looked at the Nangong soldiers who were charging forward recklessly. Stop. All of you, stop. Unfortunately, it was too late. The rebels who did not know what was going on ran toward the snow domain Heavenly Silk. That was supposed to be used against the Black Wind cavalry. Why? Why did it end up on our own people? Soon Takashi let out a beast-like roar. Gu Jiao raised her spear and killed a rebel who tried to ambush Black Wind King. The situation looked good, but only she knew that. Everyone's stamina was reaching its limit. Although it was not obvious, the Black Wind cavalry's casualties would increase if they continued to fight. Gu Jiao pulled the reins tightly. Boss. Black Wind King understood. It followed Gu Jiao's direction and galloped toward General Tsun Takashi. It was also running out of stamina. Everyone had been traveling for so many days. Not only were the people exhausted, but the horses were also exhausted. All the Black Wind cavalry gave it their all. They did not care about their lives or their internal injuries. On the side, some Black Wind cavalry had already fallen to the ground. They had fallen from exhaustion. Soon Takashi swung his sword at a Black Wind cavalry warhorse. Gu Jiao raised her spear, and with a calm sound, she blocked his ferocious sword. Soon Takashi turned around and met the young man's cold and calm eyes. The young man said calmly, "Your opponent is me." Soon Takashi made a feint and stabbed his sword at Gu Jiao's heart. His attack was almost a sneak attack. To be honest, he was embarrassed to use such a sneak attack on a junior. However, the situation was critical. If they did not take the head of the Black Wind cavalry's commander, the Nangong army would really lose this battle. Gu Jiao was hit by his sword. His eyes lit up. He knew that no one would be able to dodge this attack. However, in the next second, his expression froze. Why couldn't it pierce through? Fifth Master Han's sword could not pierce through my armor. Your sword, can it be sharper than his? Gu Jiao looked at him calmly. Under his dumbfounded gaze, she raised her red-tasseled spear and pierced through his hard armor, stabbing him in the chest. Digression. Today, Fang Fangzai also wants monthly votes. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_896421064 HTML Genius memorized this website's address. www.zhpqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhpqg.com. Chapter 834. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. General Chang Wei, one of the Nangong rebel soldiers who witnessed this scene, cried out. The Black Wind Battalion soldiers took the chance to shout out, "General Chang Wei is dead." General Chang Wei was killed by the Black Wind Battalion's commander. Brothers, their ever-victorious general has died at the hands of their commander. Everyone charge! Kill these traitors! The Black Wind Battalion soldiers' morale continued to rise. Even though everyone was on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion, they clenched their teeth tightly, not letting the Nangong rebel soldiers see any signs of exhaustion. The surrounding Nangong rebel soldiers witnessed Chang Wei being assassinated with their own eyes. Even if they couldn't see it from afar, it didn't matter because Gu Jiao directly stabbed the person with his spear, hanging him high in the air. "This is your General Chang Wei. He has already died at my hands." The young man's immature voice was full of murderous intent, and it reverberated in the noisy battlefield. General Chang Wei had never been defeated before, but now he was defeated at the hands of a fledgling youth. The youth's armor reflected the silvery white moonlight. Everyone was dazed for a moment, as if a new war god was born after Xian Yuanli. The Nangong rebel army's morale was already low, and General Chang Wei's defeat was the last straw that broke the camel's back. In front of them was the Shenyuan steel cavalry. Behind them was the snow-field silk wall that could cut through people. Some soldiers were terrified and jumped into the lake in panic. But the moment they jumped in, Chung Fugui and the others' arrows shot over like soul-stealing arrows. In just a few breaths of time, the lake's surface was covered in blood. The huge battlefield had completely turned into a slaughterhouse for the Black Wind Battalion. Every Nangong rebel army was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. What was even more tragic was that they had no leader, their morale was low, and they had already lost the will to fight. They could only wait for death and despair. "Brothers, even if we die, we must drag someone down with us. Let these Black Wind cavalry die with us." How daring was this guy? However, Gu Jiao would not give them the chance to drag the Black Wind cavalry down with them. Gu Jiao said sternly, "Those who surrender will be spared. Anyone who resists will be killed without mercy." These words were undoubtedly the only way out for the rebel army in their despair. One of them threw away the weapon in his hand. Then there was a second one. After a short while, a third one appeared. Either surrender or die. Who would be willing to die? Gu Jiao ordered the cavalry at the side, "Seize their chariots." The night wasn't over yet. In the city lord's mansion, the Nangong family head was about to rest when an urgent report came from outside the courtyard. "City lord, bad news, bad news." Nangong family head frowned. He put on his outer robe and walked out of the house. Looking at the scout who had fallen into the courtyard, he asked in a deep voice, "What happened? Why are you so flustered? Where are the rules?" The scout looked at Patriarch Nangong with tears in his eyes. "City lord, General Chang Wei, General Chang Wei." Patriarch Nangong's eyes darkened. "What happened to General Chang Wei?" The scout wiped his tears and said in a choked voice, "General Chang Wei was killed by the Black Wind Camp's commander." "What?" Patriarch Nangong's expression changed. He was stunned for a while before he rejected the scout. "Are you mistaken? How could General Chang Wei die in the hands of a brat?" These words were a little boastful. Was that brat an ordinary brat? He killed Nangong Li and captured Nangong Zhe alive. What was so strange about General Chang Wei dying in his hands? However, the scout knew that Patriarch Nangong was not referring to the strength of a one-on-one battle. After all, this was a war. The Nangong family had the absolute advantage in terms of military strength. How could they lose so easily? Furthermore, General Chang Wei claimed that he knew how to deal with the Black Wind cavalry. The scout said anxiously, "City lord, I'm not mistaken. This is true. Xiao Lulang killed General Chang Wei, and tens of thousands of soldiers were captured. Xiao Lulang stole our chariots and is rushing towards our east gate. City lord, let me escort you to leave." Patriarch Nangong said coldly, "Bastard. Who wants to leave? The scout tried his best to persuade him. City Lord. Xuyang City's military strength has been mobilized. There are only 3,000 soldiers left in the city. They are no match for 20,000 cavalry. Where there is life, there is hope. City Lord, leave this place tonight. Patriarch Nangong clenched his fist, and the veins on his forehead popped out. Where is fourth brother? Fourth brother had 5,000 cavalry. If he could rush back from the north gate, it would be possible to stop the Black Wind cavalry with the advantage of Xuyang City being easy to defend and hard to attack. They would not be able to stop them for long. In another 3 days, the Liang Kingdom's army would break through the Yen Gate Pass and head straight for Xuyang City. At that time, they would cooperate with the Liang Kingdom's army and kill the Black Wind cavalry. Woo! A muffled sound of a horn came from the distant horizon. The silent Xuyang City seemed to have been torn apart. Xuyang City was shrouded in an endless war. The scout cried, "It's too late, City Lord. Fourth Master can't make it back. We can't wait any longer. Let's run." The patrolling rebel army on the East City Tower heard the sound of the horn and the sound of the charging war drum. The dark mass of cavalry seemed to have broken through the mountains and rivers. In the darkness of the night, they were like the army of King Yama, bringing with them an unstoppable, murderous aura. The rebel army on the tower was so frightened that they fell to the ground. It's the Black Wind Cavalry. The Black Wind Cavalry has come to attack the city. The Black Wind Cavalry has come to attack the city. They knew very well how many people were left in the city. They could not defend it. Xuyang City could not be defended. Gu Jiao raised her hand and looked coldly at the towering tower. Archers, get ready. Chariots, attack. The cavalrymen pushed the chariots toward the city gate tower. The iron spikes on the chariots slammed into the thick city gate again and again. Every sound of the impact was like a landslide, causing the defenders to be in a state of panic and fear. A leader of the rebel army shouted, "Release the arrows. Shoot them to death." Arrows covered the sky and the earth as they rained down on the chariots. The cavalry beside the chariots were already prepared. They raised their shields and formed an impenetrable iron dome. Some of the arrows pierced through the gaps between his fingers. Damn! One of the cavalry saw an arrow piercing through his fingers. He was so frightened that his buttocks tightened. Catapults. The leader of the rebel army shouted again. However, before the catapults could be pushed out, Gu Jiao shot an arrow through the head of the rebel army leader. A great battle was about to break out. However, all of a sudden, the rebel army on the tower retreated. Gu Jiao vaguely heard something about the lord of the city summoning the soldiers. Not long after, a scout from the Black Wind Battalion came over. He stopped in front of Gu Jiao and saluted. "Commander, the people of the Nangong family have escaped from the South City Gate." Chung Fugui looked at the tower that had suddenly quieted down and said, "No wonder they stopped fighting. They want to escort the people of the Nangong family out." Gu Jiao was not too surprised. The Nangong family abandoning the city and escaping was part of the plan. They had dragged their tired bodies to the city in the middle of the night. They did not really want to fight the last of the Nangong family's rebel army head-on. Although the rebel army did not have many people in the city, they had the advantage in terms of battle conditions. More importantly, the Black Wind Battalion could not fight anymore. They were already at the end of their rope. The drums, horns, and siege were all just a bluff. If the Nangong family had been a little more courageous and fought them to the death, the outcome would have been very different. Attacking the city right after the battle with Tsun Takashi's 80,000 men was not just a show for the Nangong family. It was also a show for the captives. Don't think that we can't fight anymore. As long as you guys are alive, the Black Wind Cavalry will never fall. This was a very risky move. The slightest carelessness could cause the entire army to be annihilated. But if they did not do this, when 4th Master Nangong's army returned to the city, they would have to endure another terrifying battle and pay a huge price. Fortunately, she won the bet. Gu Jiao looked up at the endless sky and secretly sighed in relief. She said firmly, "Everyone can rest now. Have the reserve battalion come and break the city gate. Be careful of any unexpected changes." The scout excitedly replied, "Yes." Bang! A cavalryman fell off his horse. Soon, his horse also fell down beside him. This was not an isolated phenomenon. Gu Jiao did not need to turn around to know that a large number of people had fallen behind her. Everyone could not hold on any longer. However, until she said that it was time to rest, everyone maintained their fighting posture. Gu Jiao dragged her tired body down from her horse. Only now did she feel the soreness all over her body. Even her legs did not feel like they were hers. The red-tasseled spear was covered in blood. She did not know if it was hers or the enemy's. She patted Black Wind King's neck. Black Wind King, who was also exhausted, lowered his head in tacit understanding. One person and one horse leaned their foreheads against each other, panting slightly. They won the battle. The Black Wind Cavalry won a battle that was almost impossible to win. They did not disappoint and took Chuyang before the Liang army arrived. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964-2_89642_105825660. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 835. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. The gates of Chuyang City were too sturdy. Ordinary chariots couldn't break them open. Li Shun and Zhao Dengfeng led a group of garrison soldiers to the south gate. There, the gate was open because the Nangong family had just escaped. Li Shun and Zhao Dengfeng entered from the south gate and crossed half the city to reach the east gate. More than 20 people worked together to slowly turn the gate capstan. When they opened the city gates and were about to welcome their Black Wind Cavalry into the city, what they saw was an empty space outside the city gates. Countless cavalrymen and war horses were all over the place. Some fell asleep on the spot, while others fainted. War horses were highly vigilant and usually slept standing up, but now they were falling down in droves. This battle was truly too difficult to fight. The cavalry soldiers of the reserve camp all had tears in their eyes. As the reserve force, they didn't participate in this battle with the vanguard and assault camps. They enjoyed the victory that their companions sacrificed their lives for, but they didn't feel good about it. If they could, they also wanted to go into battle. They didn't want their companions to be so tired. Don't just stand there. Can't you see that the young commander is still busy? Li Shun looked in the direction of Gu Jiao and said, Gu Jiao didn't rest. She was helping the medical officers treat the injured soldiers. On the way here, they met Cheng Fugui, Li Jin, Tong Zhong, and the others. They learned some of the details of the battle from them. This young commander was always at the front of the troops. Wherever there was danger, he would rush there. He had killed the most enemies, but he was clearly the youngest. Zhao Dengfeng opened his mouth. He isn't tired? How could he not be tired? If the battle at the city gate was included, she had participated in all 3 battles today. Not only that, she was the only one who was treating the wounded while the other cavalrymen were recuperating. Li Shun said with a complicated expression, he's the one who overdrew the most. Zhao Dengfeng said in a daze, it's good to be young. The 2 commanders of the reserve battalion asked Gu Jiao for instructions on how to deal with the captives and the wounded soldiers near the canyon. Gu Jiao paused for a moment, then said, "Lock the captives in the barracks in the city. Bring the wounded soldiers here." After all, these captives had served the Nangong family before, so it was hard to say whether they would retaliate or not. Gu Jiao had considered taking them in, but for the time being, she couldn't risk letting them participate in an important battle. Of course, Gu Jiao could also kill them. Killing prisoners of war was a common practice throughout history, but Gu Jiao did not do so. The right commander of the reserve camp, Zhou Run, asked, "Then what about their injured soldiers?" Gu Jiao said, "Let their medical officer treat him." Hearing this, Zhou Run and Zhang Shiyong were sure that Gu Jiao really didn't want to make things difficult for these rebel captives. The young commander was so ruthless when he killed the rebels that they thought he was a bloodthirsty person. On the way here, they thought that the prisoners of war would most likely not survive. The two of them exchanged a look, and they were both surprised. But the two of them still answered, yes. There were quite a lot of people in the reserve battalion, almost 1/3 of the military strength. But fortunately, there was such a large proportion, or they wouldn't have been able to complete the various post-war arrangements. These soldiers knew how to fight, but they wouldn't be used unless it was absolutely necessary. Zhang Shiyong led a group of soldiers to escort the captives, and Li Shen and Zhao Dengfeng followed. Zhou Ren led another group of soldiers to the canyon to transport the wounded soldiers. In addition, Zhou Ren arranged for Wen Run, Chong, to bring the logistical forces that had set up camp near the mountain into the city. While the entire reserve battalion was dealing with the aftermath, a total of 2 major events happened. First, Nangong Zhe had escaped. He had broken the bones in his hand in order to escape from the narrow iron chain and ascend to the heavens. Second, Tsun Takashi wasn't dead. He was still breathing. It was discovered by the Black Wind Camp's cavalrymen who were transporting the corpses. His breathing was too weak. If not for the cavalrymen's extraordinary hearing, it would have been difficult to detect Tsun Takashi's weak breathing in the noisy scene. There were many wounded among the captives, and they were usually handed over to their own medical officers. But Tsun Takashi's identity was special, and Zhou Ren wasn't sure if he should be given the chance to treat him. So, Zhou Ren sent soldiers to ask for Gu Jiao's opinion. Gu Jiao pondered for a moment and said, "Bring him here." The cavalryman was stunned. Yes. He walked a few steps, scratched his head, and mustered up his courage to say to Gu Jiao, "Commander, Tsun Takashi has a very high reputation in the army. You better, Gu Jiao understood what he meant. He was worried that Tsun Takashi might harm her if he survived. Gu Jiao nodded. "I know. Go ahead." It was a kind gesture. Her impression of Tsun Takashi came from the dream of the 3-year civil war. The Han family wanted to become the next Xinyuan family, so they launched a plan to eliminate the other aristocratic families. The aristocratic families killed each other, and the Nangong family and the Han family killed each other the most. Among them, Tsun Takashi was the bravest general against the Han family. When he fought against the Han family, he used the snowfield silk and killed almost all of the Han family's cavalry. In that civil war, she didn't fight against Tsun Takashi because he was too annoying. He made the Han family suffer, and in the end, he was assassinated by an Han. His snowfield heavenly silkworm silk had also fallen into the hands of the Han family. This time, she did plan to use the valley as the main battlefield. But when she heard from Li Jin and Tong Zhong that the general leading the troops might be Tsun Takashi, she immediately changed her plan. She also reminded Chung Fugui that if the enemy pretended to retreat, he mustn't go over the hill and get close to the road with lakes on both sides. If she was Tsun Takashi and wanted to use the snowfield silk to deal with the Black Wind cavalry, that was the best place to set up an ambush. The Black Wind cavalry was very efficient. When Tsun Takashi was dragged over on a cart, the tents for the wounded soldiers were already set up. Gu Jiao had just finished an operation and said to the cavalry at the door, "Bring him in." 2 cavalry from the reserve camp carried Tsun Takashi, who was covered in blood, into the tent and placed him on a foldable bamboo bed. The tent was filled with luminous pearls to illuminate the place. Other than that, There were also many oil lamps and candles. Gu Jiao even used the small flashlight in the small medical box. Soon Takashi's armor was removed by Zhou Run before he came. Gu Jiao used a pair of scissors to open his shirt, exposing the wound on his left chest. Gu Jiao raised his sterilized hand and put on a glove. He looked at the unconscious Tsun Takashi and said, "I rarely fail when killing people. I wonder if this is fate." Gu Jiao came out after the operation and heard Teacher, who was waiting at the door, reporting that Mu Qingchen had returned. Zhao Lei seems to have died in battle. Teacher, who sighed. Young Master Mu didn't say what happened. Why don't you ask him yourself? As he spoke, he thought of something, and his eyebrows twitched. No, Master. You're so tired. Why don't you take a nap first? It won't be too late to ask him when you wake up. Gu Jiao walked away. Teacher, who looked at the thin figure, and sighed as he rubbed his chest. In the beginning, he followed the young commander because he wanted to climb up the social ladder. But why did he feel so different now? Teacher, who looked at the sky in confusion. He's not my son. Why should I be worried? Mu Qingchen stood far away. He stood alone by the side of the road and held onto a big tree to retch. He had vomited everything he could. Now, only the feeling of nausea was left. Gu Jiao came behind him and glanced at him calmly. It's your first time killing someone. Are you not used to it? Mu Qingchen heard Gu Jiao's voice and suppressed the urge to retch. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve and said while panting, "I killed 5 people." Zhao laid a die in his hands. He had never killed anyone before, so he couldn't get over it. He plotted to make Zhao Lei fall off his horse and die under the hooves of a Nangong Sitsi. However, he didn't expect that the Nangong family's 5,000 soldiers were not that easy to get rid of. Mu Qingchen said with difficulty, "You said that we don't have to fight, but you knew that there would be a fight." Gu Jiao put her hands behind her back and said calmly, "I just told you to quit while you're ahead and run away. I didn't say that there wouldn't be a fight and that no one would die. How are your casualties?" Mu Qingchen said in a low voice, "More than 10 cavalrymen were injured." Because he didn't want to kill at first, one of the Black Wind Battalion's cavalrymen was seriously injured by the Nangong family's rebels in order to protect him. "It's good that you're all back," Gu Jiao said sincerely. Mu Qingchen didn't feel good about it. He felt disgusted when he thought of killing people. "Did you feel like this when you killed someone for the first time?" he asked. "I don't remember," Gu Jiao said. "I killed too many people." Mu Qingchen looked at her in surprise. Gu Jiao didn't explain. She turned around and walked back. As she walked, she said, "You'd better get used to it. There won't be such easy missions for you to practice. The Jin Kingdom's army has broken through Tian Shan Pass, and the Liang Kingdom's army will arrive at Yanmen Pass in 3 days." Mu Qingchen, the real battle has begun. Digression, Marquis Xianping. It's so lonely to be invincible, Princess Xinyang. Get lost. Marquis Xianping. Okay. Get lost and play with your son. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find on the internet. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_896428226/105824479. HTML Genius memorized the website's address in 1 second. www.zhpqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhpqg.com. Chapter 836. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. At 5 o'clock, all the Black Wind Cavalry who were resting on the ground outside the city had woken up. They lined up neatly and stood against the wind. No matter how tired or exhausted they were, once the army was reorganized, they would be able to quickly enter a state of combat readiness. Gu Jiao, who had been busy the whole night and hadn't rested, was riding on the back of the Black Wind King. His red armor was like fire, and the black armor was like a blade. Even the howling wind couldn't blow away the killing intent and fighting spirit of this young man. After yesterday's battle, everyone looked at this young commander in a new light. Whether or not they could trust him with their loyalty was another matter, but they could trust him with their backs. On the battlefield, he was the king. Gu Jiao held the reins with one hand and her helmet with the other. She looked at all the Black Wind cavalry calmly and said the 10th and 9th rules of the army. Everyone straightened their backs and recited with a magnanimous expression on their faces, stealing people's belongings and taking people's heads for their own benefit, taking people's heads for their own merit. This is called a pirate army. Those who break this rule will be beheaded. Wherever you go, you abuse the people. If you separate women, this is called a traitor army. Those who break this rule will be beheaded. Gu Jiao said, "Very good. You are the soldiers of the Great Yen. Ziyang City belongs to the Great Yen. Remember the mission on your shoulders. Don't hurt the people in the city in any way." After saying that, she looked at the Great Yen flag and the Xinyuan Flying Eagle flag raised high in the cavalry's hands. Enter the city. Nearly 50,000 people entered the city. It was still early, and the people in the city were still resting. The Black Wind cavalry's hooves were very light, and the soldiers tried to minimize the sound of armor rubbing against each other. Even so, when they were halfway through the journey, the people in the city got up early and started to work. When they saw the Black Wind cavalry, they were so scared that they froze on the spot. In the market, a peddler carrying mountain goods whispered to his companion, "I told you that I heard someone ramming the gate last night. You didn't believe me. Look, didn't they break in?" All the people kept quiet out of fear. The difference between the Black Wind cavalry and the Nangong army was obvious. Firstly, their aura was different. Secondly, their armor and war horses were vastly different. Not to mention that one of the banners in front of the troops was different. Gu Jiao took the lead and walked at the front. She put on her helmet, but didn't put down her mask. Her young and tender face was exposed, along with the birthmark on her left cheek. The commoners were terrified. The Black Wind King was the king of war horses, and its aura was unapproachable. The strange-looking man and his ferocious-looking warhorse made some children cry on the spot. The child's mother hurriedly covered the child's mouth, afraid that the little god of death would be unhappy and kill her son. Gu Jiao didn't mind and continued to ride the Black Wind King forward. Bang! He didn't know who had closed the windows. Bang! Then, someone closed the door. The commoners on the street seemed to have finally come to their senses. They carried their children and pushed their stalls, and the lively street was suddenly empty. Advisor, who was riding behind Gu Jiao, opened his mouth. "My lady, we don't seem to be very popular. We are the ones who cleaned up the rebels and saved the people of Ziyang City. Shouldn't the commoners line the streets to welcome us?" Gu Jiao said calmly, "In their eyes, we are the rebels." Advisor, who a 1-year-old child was placed in a basket next to a vegetable stall. The adults didn't see the basket fall, and the little guy didn't cry either. He used his hands and feet to crawl out of the basket. As he crawled, he arrived at the official road. Chung Fugui was walking at the front of the troops. He hurriedly stepped out, dismounted, and picked up the child. Chung Fugui didn't look fierce, but he had been in a battle. His face was bruised and swollen, and he looked quite fierce and scary. The little guy burst into tears and stretched out his hand towards his parents, who were not far away. His parents were shocked. They rushed into the house and closed the door without saying a word. Chung Fugui was confused. "You don't want your child anymore?" The little guy wailed loudly. His cries were heart-wrenching and soul-stirring. He didn't forget to use his invincible little chubby hand to pull Chung Fugui's ear. Chung Fugui cried out in pain. "Ouch, ouch, ouch." In the end, Mu Qingchen came over on his horse. He dismounted and came to Cheng Fugui's side. "Give him to me." The little guy stopped crying as soon as he was in his arms. He was very obedient, and his little fat hand was very quiet. He was indeed a handsome uncle who could even coax a young princess. Mu Qingchen walked over with the little guy in his arms and gently knocked on the door. The couple looked out through the crack of the door. If it were Cheng Fugui, they would be too scared to open the door. Mu Qingchen didn't have much murderous aura, so even if he was wearing armor, he still gave people a sense of elegance and refinement. The couple boldly opened the door. Mu Qingchen returned the child to them. "Be careful in the future," he reminded them. The couple looked at the handsome young man in front of them in a daze. "Ah, yes, yes," Mu Qingchen turned and left, returning to the team with Cheng Fugui. Looking at the unscathed child in their arms, the couple couldn't believe it. The news of Xuyang City being recaptured spread to Tianshan Pass, which was hundreds of miles away. In the mansion of Linfeng City, old Master Han and his descendants gathered together. After listening to the spy's report, the atmosphere in the parlor was a bit solemn. Old Master Han's eldest son, Han Ye's father, Han Lei, said with emotion, "I didn't expect the Imperial Army to arrive so soon." The silver-haired fifth Master Han sat opposite Han Lei. He said, "The main force hasn't arrived yet. Only the Black Wind Cavalry has arrived." Han Lei glanced at his brother. "That's what I meant. The Black Wind Cavalry is also the Imperial Army." In the past, the Han family had never been so hostile. However, when the war started, everyone was on high alert. Naturally, their emotions fluctuated more than before. Fifth Master Han didn't care about his brother's tone. He only said lightly, 50,000 Black Wind Cavalry, less than 20,000 of them. Even so, they still managed to take down Xuyang City, which was guarded by 80,000 soldiers. Han Lei said coldly, "That was Xiao Yolong's trick." Fifth Master Han said, "All is fair in war. Even Chang Wei fell. I don't know what our Han family's chances of winning are." Han Lei frowned. "Fifth brother, you're praising others too much. You're diminishing our own morale." Fifth Master Han said lightly, "If it was you, would you be able to lead the Black Wind Cavalry and defeat Chang Wei's 80,000 soldiers?" Han Lei choked. After a while he mumbled, "That's because the Black Wind Cavalry is powerful." He took advantage of the situation. Speaking of which, the Black Wind Cavalry was trained by our Han family. The imperial court is really shameless. They stole our soldiers and killed our people. Fifth Master Han said calmly, "Have you forgotten? We also took it from the Xianyuan family." Third Master Han was a good-for-nothing. He didn't care about war. He looked at his eldest brother and his fifth brother. He didn't know who to support. Old Master Han stomped his walking stick. "All right, both of you, stop arguing. Just one Xiao Lulang, and you're already in such a mess. You've really brought shame to the Han family." The Black Wind Cavalry was the strongest army in the Yan Kingdom. It wasn't easy to deal with them. In addition, the Nangong family was careless and underestimated the enemy. That's why they fell into Xiao Liulong's trap. This guy is indeed quite capable. However, his forces are limited. It won't be easy to defend Xuyang City. The Imperial Court's army will arrive in about 10 days. However, the Liang Kingdom's army will break through the Yen Gate Pass in 3 days. The main general of the Liang Kingdom's army is Chu Feipeng. He's a famous divine general. He used to be as famous as Xin Yuancheng. Xiao Lulang will be dealt with by him. After the Black Wind Cavalry entered Xuyang City, Gu Jiao didn't stay in the city lord's residence. Instead, she stayed in the barracks with the soldiers. Mu Qingchen was sent out as a woman's friend to spread the news that the Black Wind Cavalry was a righteous army. Gu Jiao sat in the barracks. She looked at the small wooden tokens on the sand table. Each wooden token represented 1,000 soldiers. They were stationed at the various strongholds in the city. It's still not enough. She rubbed her chin. Once the Liang Kingdom's army attacked, 10 to 20,000 cavalry would not be enough, especially since the Liang Kingdom's manufacturing industry was very advanced. Their siege chariots were very powerful. They were 3 times more powerful than the Yan Kingdom's chariots. They also used ladders to climb up the city walls. They could pull people up directly. The advantage of cavalry was in attacking the city. It was rare to use cavalry to defend the city. If the Black Wind Cavalry was able to display all their advantages in the battle against the 80,000-strong army of the Nangong family, then the following battle against the Liang Kingdom's army would no longer be the Black Wind Cavalry's home ground. It would be an even more difficult battle. Digression. The third watch is here. Please give me a monthly vote. While the original article came from Baidu Encyclopedia. Han Xian's Military Rules, 17 Forbidden Laws 54 strikes. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896/10581826/10581826. HTML Genius, memorize this website's address. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 837. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online here. Gu Jiao was too tired. As she thought about it, her eyelids drooped and she fell asleep on the small table in front of her. The curtain of her tent was open for ventilation, and there were 2 cavalrymen guarding the door. A cavalryman of the vanguard passed by and inadvertently glanced inside. Then he paused. Then 2 more, 3 more. For more, Gu Jiao didn't know that the door was crowded with curious heads. The young commander is drooling. The young commander is frowning. He's wrinkling his nose. Lower your voice. Gu Jiao was lying on the table. Her tender cheeks were squashed. Her mouth was slightly open, and crystal clear saliva flowed out. After learning from Wang Man for so many days, Gu Jiao, who had finally learned the essence of it, had no idea that her image as an official had completely collapsed one day. Hey, don't push me, I can't see. A cavalryman muttered. He was almost squeezed out. There were more and more onlookers. Everyone wanted to see the young commander sleep. Speaking of which, it was strange. They were all grown men, so why would they like to look at another grown man? In terms of appearance, Mu Qingchen was more handsome. After all, he was the first young master of Chengdu. But they didn't like to stare at Mu Qingchen. What's going on? What's going on? Advisor who had just come out of the kitchen, was shocked when he saw the door was surrounded by people. He thought that something big had happened in the commander's tent. He asked, but no one paid attention to him. He poked the cavalryman at the back of the line. Hey, what's going on? The cavalryman didn't look back and pushed his hand away. Don't be noisy. Go away. Advisor whose eyes widened and he gasped. What did this brat say? Who should go away? I'm your Uncle Hu. I'm no longer that nameless and unappreciated advisor. I'm Chief Commander Zhao's most important confidant. I've followed His Excellency everywhere and fought everywhere. My status is very high. Advisor who was furious. He raised his hand, jumped up, and slapped the back of the cavalryman's head. How dare you? The cavalryman turned around and saw that it was Advisor who. He shrunk his neck and pinched his companion's, but his companion slapped his hand away. What are you doing? I'm looking at the young commander. Cough, cough. He coughed heavily. All the cavalrymen turned around and glared at him. They lowered their voices and said in unison, Shut up. He woke up the little commander. Then they saw Advisor, who with a gloomy face. Everyone stood there awkwardly for 3 seconds before they scattered like a swarm of bees. Unable to catch any of them, Advisor, who gritted his teeth in anger. A bunch of brats. He stormed into the tent angrily. When he saw Gu Jiao lying on the table, he couldn't help but cover his heart. It can't be, right? What kind of immortal commander was this? It was too cute. Gu Jiao slept until the afternoon. Advisor, who let down the curtain of the tent. Perhaps the group of brats would see the little commander's squeaky face again. After Gu Jiao woke up, she wiped the corners of her mouth without batting an eyelid, as if nothing had happened. If I'm not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed. Advisor, who smiled embarrassedly. Sir, it's still early. Do you want to rest for a while? No. Gu Jiao rubbed her sore neck. How's the situation in the city? Advisor, who said, everything is fine. Don't worry, sir. Thinking of something, Gu Jiao asked, Ziyang City has a governor, right? Advisor, who had already gathered all this information. He said, the old city lord was from the Nangong family. After the head of the Nangong family came, he became the city lord himself. When he left, he took the old city lord with him. Gu Jiao nodded. We have to find a new governor to restore order in the city. Advisor, who hurriedly said, I'll keep an eye on it. Oh, by the way, sir, when you were resting just now, the medical officer from the casualty barracks came and said that Chang Wei has woken up. Gu Jiao was surprised. Oh, that's fast. His vitality is not bad. I'll go take a look. Looking at his skinny figure, Advisor, who couldn't help but blurt out, eat before you go. It was the tone of an elder scolding his own child. Gu Jiao, who had already stood up, looked at Advisor, who strangely. Advisor, who realized what he had said in a moment of desperation. He was so scared that he trembled and lowered his head. I meant you haven't eaten anything for the whole day. Chang Wei isn't worried. He won't die anytime soon anyway. Sir, why don't you go after dinner? Don't punish me, don't punish me. It wasn't easy for me to make a name for myself. Don't make me sit on the bench again. Oh, okay. Gu Jiao sat back down on the cushion. Advisor, who clutched his chest in shock. He almost thought that he was going to die. Gu Jiao's meal was simple. There were 2 steamed buns and a plate of pickled vegetables. Today, they had slaughtered pigs in the reserve barracks and made braised pork with cabbage for the soldiers. Advisor, who also left a bowl for Gu Jiao. War consumed a lot of energy, so did his appetite. Gu Jiao swept away all the food on the table. Advisor, who was stunned. Gu Jiao went to the casualty barracks. Chang Wei's situation was special. There was a possibility that he would counterattack. He was placed in a separate casualty barracks and was guarded by 2 Black Wind cavalry. When Gu Jiao went in, a medical officer's attendant was feeding him porridge. He turned his face away in refusal. The attendant was put in a difficult position. You may leave, Gu Jiao said to the attendant. Yes. The attendant put down the bowl and left. Gu Jiao came to the bedside and looked at Chang Wei indifferently. You woke up quite quickly. Chang Wei turned around and looked coldly at Gu Jiao. His pale lips spoke in a weak but powerful voice. Kill me if you want. Don't even think about anything else. Gu Jiao put his hands behind his back and raised his eyebrows. I'm curious. Why are you so loyal to the Nangong family? They are rebels. Don't you care? Chang Wei said coldly. Don't talk nonsense here. We don't know who the rebels are yet. The king is heartless. There's no need for us to serve him. King, oh king, look at the sins you've committed. Gu Jiao said. The king is heartless, but does the Nangong family have any morals? How much do you know about the Xianyuan family? Yes, the king wanted to kill the Xianyuan family. The king wants to get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. It's not worth serving him. But do you think the Nangong family is a good thing? If the Nangong family didn't work with the Han family to betray the Xianyuan family, how could the imperial court destroy the Xianyuan family with their measly military strength? Chang Wei said sarcastically, Do you think I'll believe you just because you're spouting nonsense? Gu Jiao said again, I'll only ask you one thing. If the Nangong family betrayed the country, are you still willing to serve them? Chang Wei looked away. That's none of your business. It was an evasive action. It seemed that the only reason Chang Wei served the Nangong family was because he was grateful to the Nangong family for recognizing his worth. The rest was because he was dissatisfied with the king's cruelty. However, he didn't seem to have any intention of betraying the country. He also didn't know that the Nangong family had plans to collude with the country of Liang. It was too late to look for evidence now. She only had 3 days to make Chang Wei believe her. If Tsun Takashi was still unwilling to fight the enemy with her after 3 days, then Tsuang City would most likely be lost. South of the country of Yen, Duke An and his great-aunt wanted to reach Chishui Pass as soon as possible. After leaving Hu City, they chose to travel by sea. Wang Su followed them. They boarded the Navy warship at the Yamen port. If the journey went smoothly, they would reach Chishui Pass within 5 days. His great-aunt was obviously dissatisfied with the progress. She was worried sick about Jiao Jiao. She didn't know how much hardship she had to go through, how many battles she had to fight, how much blood she had to shed, and how many injuries she had to suffer. Is there a shortcut? She asked. The old chancellor asked in the language of the Yen kingdom. Wang Su already knew that they were the distinguished guests of the duke's public house. He cupped his hands politely and said, "There is, but it's a bit risky. That place doesn't belong to the sea area of the Yen kingdom. We almost never go there." His great-aunt glanced at him. The old chancellor immediately understood and continued to ask Wang Su in the language of the Yen kingdom, "How fast can we go there?" 2 days, Wang Su said. "We'll go there," his great-aunt said decisively. Wang Su looked at Duke An, who was opposite him. Duke An wrote, agreed. He was worried that Gu Jiaojiao had the same feeling as his great-aunt. 3 days was nothing in a peaceful area, but in the border where the flames of war were spreading, it was the life and death of tens of thousands. Duke An was the imperial envoy. Wang Su had no choice but to listen to him on important matters. He said unwillingly, "But if something happens on the way, don't regret it." Wang Su's jinx came true in the afternoon when they took the shortcut. Their 3 warships were surrounded by a group of pirates. The pirates were all tall and strong. They were incomparably brave. The military forces on the warships were almost powerless in the hands of these valiant pirates. Finally, the pirates broke through the blockade of the warships and stepped onto the warship that Duke An and the others were on. The pirate leader raised the machete in his hand. "Brothers, go. Kill all their men. Snatch all their women. Capture all their children." This person was 7 feet tall. He had a strong body and a strong aura. He wore a small cloth over his right eye. Everyone thought of the pirate One-Eyed Dragon at the same time. He didn't make a move himself. However, one of his subordinates was very fast and had very high martial arts. He knocked down 2 or 3 people with 1 punch. Not long after, all the guards on Class A were thrown into the sea. Wang Su pulled out his long sword and slashed at the back of the little pirate. Who would have thought that before he could even touch the little pirate's hair, the little pirate would turn around and fiercely stomp down, stepping on him? Wang Su lay on the deck and vomited blood. Even pirates have such high martial arts now? The little pirate took care of all the guards. The pirate leader raised the corner of his beautiful lips and came to Wang Su without restraint. He said in the language of the Yen kingdom that he wasn't very familiar with robbery. "Gold, hand it over." The little pirate stepped on Wang Su's face expressionlessly. Wang Su gritted his teeth and said, "I won't hand it over even if I die. You're quite stubborn." The pirate leader faintly pointed to the room where his great-aunt and the others were. He said arrogantly, "Then I can only kill them all." As soon as he said that, a small round head poked out from the room. The owner of the small head looked at the pirate leader and blinked her big eyes. "Little chicken monkey." Digression, little chicken monkey. Do you have monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964-2_826/105802150. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 838. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet can be found here. This little chick monkey was simply a demon's voice. A certain one-eyed pirate leader's body trembled. It can't be? How could it be this guy? Also, how could he still be recognized when he was already armed to this extent? You've got the wrong person. The one-eyed pirate leader refused to admit it. He turned around and strode towards the guardrail. He wanted to get off the ship. Once the news of him robbing his own people reached his son's ears, his son would be angry with him. He hooked his finger at the little pirate and said, "Retreat." Little Jing Kong ran out and said, Little chick monkey, why are you leaving?" The one-eyed pirate quickened his pace and strode forward, adhering to the principle of, "It's not my fault if I'm not caught." Who would have thought that at this moment, the little pirate's marbles would fall out and clatter at his feet? He stepped on it and fell face first onto the ground. "My waist, Chong Jing, can't you not cheat your master for a day?" Chong Jing looked at Marquis Xian Ping with disdain. He picked up the marbles on the deck and rubbed them on Marquis Xian Ping's trousers. Then he put the clean marbles back into his brocade pouch. "Brother Chong Jing." Little Jing Kong came to Chong Jing's side, raised his little head, and stretched out his little fist. "Long time no see." "And Jing Kong, long time no see." Chong Jing nodded and stretched out his hand to punch little Jing Kong. Wang Su was dumbfounded. "What's going on? Do you know each other? What dialect are you speaking? Why can't I understand?" Little Jing Kong was an ordinary little language genius. He switched seamlessly to the Zhao language, so of course, Wang Su couldn't understand. However, the people in the room understood. The old chancellor walked out with a sullen face. "Marquis Xian Ping, how dare you leave your position as a marquis and become a pirate on the sea?" He even said something like kill all their men, steal all their women, and catch all their children. Listen. Is this something that a marquis of a country can say? He was a living pirate. Is this what you got from suppressing the bandits at sea last year? Instead of learning the good stuff, why did he learn the words of these bastards? Marquis Xian Ping had already calmed down, and he slowly climbed up from the ground. He dusted his sleeves in a dignified and elegant manner and smiled. "Chancellor Hua, long time no see. How have you been?" "I'm just," the old chancellor interrupted his words and continued on his behalf. "It's just pretending to be a pirate to test the military strength of our warship. However, it seems like this military strength isn't enough. I still have to go out personally to escort you." Marquis Xian Ping's mouth twitched. "No wonder you're a storyteller. How did you manage to guess such an excellent line?" Marquis Xian Ping hurriedly changed the topic. "Speaking of which, why are you on the Yen Kingdom ship? You are the Chancellor of Zhao Country. It is not appropriate for you to appear together with the officials of Yen Country." His ability to play the blame game has improved. "Unfortunately, Marquis Xian Ping, the person you are facing this time is not me." The old chancellor stepped to the side. From the side room, Empress Dowager Zhuang walked out majestically. Marquis Xian Ping's gaze trembled. He looked at the old chancellor and then looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang. "No way, the two of you eloped," the old chancellor exploded on the spot. "It's not what you think." Marquis Xian Ping looked at him strangely. "If it's not, then it's not. Why are you so agitated?" The old chancellor raised his hand and tidied up his lapel. Am I agitated?" Aren't you the one who ruined the Empress Dowager's reputation? Marquis Xianping squinted his eyes. Granduncle. The old chancellor replied instantly. What? Marquis Xianping. He. Wang Su didn't understand the language of Zhao country. He only saw them talking back and forth and didn't know what they were talking about. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at Marquis Xianping deeply. Come with me. Marquis Xianping followed the Empress Dowager into the side room. Wang Su supported himself on the deck and stood up. He looked at the little pirate who was skilled in martial arts, and then looked at the big pirate who seemed to listen to the Empress Dowager. He felt a throbbing pain in his chest. What kind of people were these? If he had known, he wouldn't have exchanged missions with the Feng family's kid. He should have followed the emperor's grandson to Qin country. Chang Jing and little Jing Kong stayed on the deck to play marbles. Marquis Xianping followed the Empress Dowager into the side room for discussion. There were two familiar faces sitting inside, Gu Yan and Gu Shaoshun. Madame Nan and Master Lu had some private matters to attend to in Chengdu, so they didn't come back with them. There was also an unfamiliar man in a wheelchair. Gu Yan and Gu Shaoshun didn't speak. They knew that Marquis Anghua was proficient in 6 languages. No matter what they said, they would be exposed. They simply didn't greet Marquis Xianping and just looked at him with their eyes. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, We're all on the same side. There's no need to be restrained. This is Marquis Xianping of Zhao country. She introduced him to Marquis Anghua and then said to Marquis Xianping, Marquis Anghua of Yan country, Jiao Jiao's adoptive father. His daughter-in-law had an adoptive father in Yan country? Marquis Xianping instantly became polite. He smiled and said, Marquis Anghua, I've heard a lot about you. Marquis Anghua wrote in Zhao country's language on the armrest, Marquis Xianping, I've heard a lot about you. He really heard a lot about you. 20 years ago, this guy was on the beauty list of the 6 countries. Who didn't know you? You can even write backwards. Marquis Xianping admired him. Sit down. Empress Dowager Zhuang said. Marquis Xianping sat down. He looked at Gu Shaoshun and said, You've grown taller. Then he looked at Gu Yan and asked, Have you recovered? His essence, energy, and spirit were all different. Gu Yan said with pride, I've recovered. My sister cured me. Marquis Xianping nodded and said, My daughter-in-law is amazing. Don't be so fast. She's not your daughter-in-law yet. If it weren't for the occasion, Marquis Anghua would have written this sentence on the armrest. However, there were priorities. Now was not the time to care about love. Gu Jiao's life was the key. The purpose of his expedition to the east was to negotiate peace with Zhao country. To be able to see Zhao country's generals ahead of time was a rare opportunity for him. My identity, you must have guessed a bit. Empress Dowager Zhuang said to Marquis Anghua. Marquis Anghua looked at Marquis Xianping. He dipped his finger in water and wrote on the armrest, Zhao country, Empress Dowager Zhuang. Along the way, he had a few guesses. He only confirmed it just now. To be able to make Marquis Xianping bow, other than the Emperor of Dezhou, there was only the Empress Dowager Regent. Empress Dowager Zhuang also introduced the old chancellor. His surname is Hua. He is the chancellor of Zhao country's Imperial College. He had heard a bit about Zhao country. Empress Dowager Zhuang and Chancellor Hua were mortal enemies. Even if a knife fell from the sky, the two would not mix. Thus, Marquis Anghua really did not guess that the other party was the old chancellor. Empress Dowager Zhuang said faintly, Next, let's talk business. I'll keep it short. The reason we came to Yan country was because we were worried about the children. Marquis Xianping looked around. Heng is not on the boat. Empress Dowager Zhuang said. Where did he go? Marquis Xianping asked. He went to Qin country. Empress Dowager Zhuang said, Don't be in a rush to ask. Let me finish speaking. You left the military camp without permission. This is a crime of dereliction of duty. Pretending to be a pirate and kidnapping the Empress Dowager is a crime of offending your superior. Marquis Xianping rubbed his hands and said with a smile, I didn't know it was you, right? We're family. Give me some face. Empress Dowager Zhuang said in a low voice, I cannot look into your matter, but the matter of Jiao. Do you want to care about it? Marquis Xianping said with a smile that was not a smile. Oh, what happened to that girl? Empress Dowager Zhuang saw his appearance and knew that he really did not know what happened in Yan country. He could not be blamed. But when she thought of the abyss of suffering in Jiao, this guy still had the mind to rob at sea. She really wanted to give him a big slap. Empress Dowager Zhuang suppressed her anger and said seriously, she was surrounded by the rebel army of the Yan and the army of Jin and Liang. She will not be able to hold on for much longer. Marquis Xianping's smile became cold. His eyes gradually became dangerous. Empress Dowager Zhuang sighed. Many things happened in between. In a moment, Chancellor Hu will explain everything to you. In short, you came to attack the Yan this time. You are not attacking anyone else. You are attacking Ahing and Jiao. Marquis Xianping. Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at him and said with a calm expression, also, I should congratulate you. Your son is still alive. The one that Princess Xianyang gave birth to. Marquis Xianping again. Empress Dowager Zhuang ignored Marquis Xianping's shock and asked, who are you going south with this time? Without waiting for Marquis Xianping to speak, a certain Grand Marshal's devilish laughter came from the deck. Ha ha ha. Old Xiao. Today, we robbed another fat fish. Our army's pay has increased again. This method of raking in soldiers' pay is not bad. Later, we will help the Yan in the name of suppressing the bandits. We will have them pay us a bit more for suppressing the bandits. We will gain both fame and fortune. Ha 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 ha. Gu Yan and Gu Shaoshan looked sympathetically at the door, the unlucky guy who had fallen without even making an appearance. The two silently counted in their hearts, 1, 2, 3. The burly Tang Yushan boldly and decisively walked into the room. He laughed loudly 3 times, but on the 4th time, he suddenly choked. Then he could no longer laugh. Digression, Empress Dowager Zhuang. How did you lead my Grand Marshal astray like this? Marquis Xianping. Cough, maybe a talent? The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/8964-2_89642826/105801645. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 839. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet here. I'm in the wrong place. Tang Yueshan turned and walked out. His reaction was the same as when Marquis Xianping was caught. It was obvious that he had been led astray by Marquis Xianping recently. They used to be political enemies. One was loyal to the Empress Dowager and the other to the Emperor. Nobody knew when they suddenly shook hands and made peace. Maybe it was because the Empress Dowager and the Emperor had buried the hatchet. But the two of you can make peace with each other. But why are you colluding with each other? Was there such a big difference? It was not surprising that Marquis Xianping did such a thing. He was not a serious person. He was the most shameless person in the world. Of course, he was also the most good-looking person. The problem was that Tang Yueshan was not like that. He was the supreme marshal of the army. If he had behaved like Marquis Xianping, Empress Dowager Zhuang would have driven him as far away as possible. Tang Yueshan and Marquis Xianping were dressed in the same way. Even the essence of one-eyed dragon was gone. The difference was that Marquis Xianping covered his right eye, and he covered his left. In addition, Marquis Xianping was dressed as an unruly and handsome pirate. Tang Yueshan was only unruly. Seeing Tang Yueshan, Marquis Xianping remembered that he had not taken off his eye mask. He hurriedly took it off. Once he did, his appearance was revealed. Dukan finally understood who Shang Guanqing looked like. It seemed that not only the appearance, but also the character, was exactly like him. Marquis Xianping turned his head and smiled calmly. "Old Tang, come here. Come here, my ass. Why didn't you say that the Empress Dowager was in there? It's all your fault. I said to rob the merchant ship, but you had to rob the warship of the government." Empress Dowager Zhuang glanced at him coldly. Tang Yueshan's heart skipped a beat. Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, "Tang Yueshan, you are bold. Who is the fat fish? Tell me." Tang Yueshan was not as eloquent as Marquis Xianping. His voice was stuck in his throat. He was puzzled. Why was it that when he and Marquis Xianping robbed Great Yan's warship, they could rob Empress Dowager Zhuang? The old chancellor was also there. There were also two faces that he seemed to have seen before, but wasn't sure about. There was also an unfamiliar man sitting in a wheelchair. Wow. Could it be that the Empress Dowager was kidnapped by the people of the Great Yan, and he was the one who did it? You're thinking too much. There isn't. Empress Dowager Zhuang hit the nail on the head. Tang Yueshan lowered his head and cupped his hands pitifully. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Humph." Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. Tang Yueshan glanced at Duke listlessly. "Who is he?" This man looked the weakest in the room, but his aura was the strongest after Empress Dowager Zhuang and Marquis Xianping. Empress Dowager Zhuang was not in the mood to introduce them to him one by one. Marquis Xianping was very happy to share Empress Dowager Zhuang's worries. Marquis Xianping introduced him with a smile. "This is Duke An of the Great Yan, my in-law." Tang Yueshan was confused. "I haven't seen you for a while. How come you robbed your in-law?" Marquis Xianping was speechless. After they got to know each other, Tang Yueshan asked the two little guys about them. When he learned that they were the little girl's younger brothers, he generously took out 2 jadeite and golden balls and gave them to play with. Gu Yan didn't take them. Tang Yueshan didn't realize what Tang Ming had done to Gu Xiaoshan until Gu Yan took Gu Yan out of the room. You would never know how painful it was until you hit your own feet with a brick. Now that it hit him, he had mixed feelings. Of course, the most important thing now was how to reinforce Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao's situation was too difficult. Although they were rushing east, the battle reports from the west were constantly sent by pigeons. They already knew that Gu Jiao led the Black Wind Battalion to take Cuyang City alone. Cuyang City was the fortress of Yanmen Pass, where 80,000 rebels of the Nangong family were stationed. Thinking of the huge gap in strength and the fact that Gu Jiao went thousands of miles to fight, Empress Dowager Zhuang's heart was full of anxiety. This was much more difficult than attacking the Chun Kingdom and the remnants of the previous dynasty in the Zhao Kingdom. Fortunately, Gu Jiao only acted secretly at that time. There were many main combatants, including Tang Yueshan, Marquis Ding, and Gu Chao, Gu Chongqing, and the generals at the border. The people also lined the streets to welcome her. It was a battle of unity between the people and the people. Right now, her Jiao Jiao was facing a besieged situation. The old chancellor told the two of them about all the things that happened in the Yan Kingdom, including the reason why the children went to the Yan Kingdom was to treat Guyan's illness, Xiao Heng's identity, and Xiao Qing, who was still alive. After that, he also talked about Gu Jiao's various encounters in Shangdu. To be exact, it was a mess. With her own strength, she caused a stir in the whole circle, killed Nangong Li, and stirred up the water in the pool of Shangdu. Marquis Xianping and Tang Yueshan listened and nodded with pride. She is so good at stirring up trouble. She is indeed my son brother and daughter-in-law brother. The old chancellor was speechless. The amount of information was too much for them to digest. But it didn't matter. A woman's heart was a cupboard that piled everything together. A man's heart was a drawer that could store different things and emotions without affecting each other. It was the same for them to digest it one by one on the way. Tang Yueshan cleared his throat and decisively betrayed his friend for glory. Empress Dowager, in fact, we are not the only ones here. Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned. Who else? Marquis Xianping and Tang Yueshan were already shocking enough. She really couldn't think of any big shot in the Zhao kingdom who was capable enough or strong enough to mix with these two people. A huge pirate ship was docked on the sea a mile away. Under the mast with the sail closed, a mighty and cold figure stood. He put his hands behind his back and looked at the sea with majestic eyes. His gray hair was blown by the sea wind. Suddenly, a small boat came into his sight. The boat was very fast and soon came to the warship. He didn't mean to put down the rope ladder, and the people on the boat were not in a hurry. They easily jumped onto the tall warship with Qinggong. Old Gu. Tang Yueshan strode toward him and patted him on the shoulder. I asked you to come with me, but you didn't. You missed a good show. The old Marquis glanced at Tang Yueshan lightly. Take your hand away. In terms of official position, Tang Yueshan was above him. But this time, His Majesty appointed him as the main general in the south. If there was a war, Tang Yueshan had to listen to him. He didn't want to participate in the robbery of Tang Yueshan and Marquis Xianping, but he wouldn't strictly forbid it. First of all, with Marquis Xianping's virtue, he absolutely couldn't forbid it. Second, there were no fish in the clear water. After so many years of ups and downs in the officialdom, the only thing he could do was to keep his nature unchanged. But if he couldn't tolerate any sand in the bottom of his eyes and dealt with people he saw, it was either he killed them all or they killed him. He wouldn't be so upright and outspoken. He came here to watch the two and make sure they didn't go too far. For now, it seemed to be working well. The two were restrained and didn't make too much trouble. Marquis Xianping smiled. Old monkey. The old Marquis's heart skipped a beat for no reason. What trouble did you make this time? What trouble can I make? Marquis Xianping spread out his hands. I just robbed Empress Dowager. The old Marquis staggered and almost fell into the sea. He looked at Marquis Xianping in disbelief. What did you say? Empress Dowager, she. Tang Yueshan added, not only Empress Dowager, but also your precious grandson. But you may not be able to see him. We have a new task and have to set off immediately to reinforce the Yan dynasty's cavalry. I forgot to mention, it's your granddaughter. The old Marquis frowned. Tang Yueshan had been completely led astray by Marquis Xianping. He didn't mind watching the fun. What? Do you still want to pretend that you don't know? Gu Jiao had been away for a long time. Many things had happened in the Zhao kingdom, including various legends and rumors about her. Of course, the old Marquis didn't care about these. Even when Gu Jiao was conferred as the protector of the country, the emperor tried to cover her little identity in front of the old Marquis. However, Marquis Gu held Gu Xiaobao and lectured him, saying things like, don't learn from your sister when you grow up. You think you're so great just because you know a little martial arts and know how to fight. You bully her father every day and so on. The old Marquis, who went to visit Gu Xiaobao, heard these words. When the old Marquis asked, Gu Jiao's horse fell off the horse. She knew martial arts, and this alone couldn't escape. In addition, there were all kinds of masks in her room that the old Marquis was familiar with. Yao sure didn't have time to hide, so it was confirmed. The old Marquis said coldly, I don't have such a rebellious granddaughter. A girl should act like a girl. How could she play with swords and spears all day long? She even fooled him, her biological grandfather, and went to the Yan dynasty to be a cavalry. It was unreasonable. Tang Yueshan looked at Marquis Xianping. Old Xiao he won't go. Marquis Xianping casually rolled up his sleeves. Okay, then let's go. Tang Yueshan nodded. The next second, they raised their hands together, one on each side, and blocked the old Marquis's arms. The old Marquis was suddenly dragged back, and he glared at them. What are you doing? Marquis Xianping smiled. We're going to the border. Digression, Marquis. I definitely did want to come. Gu Jiao, oh. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, Please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/105796488. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 840. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. In the wounded barracks of Chuyang City, Gu Jiao had just finished distributing the anti-inflammatory medicine and wound balm to the medical officers. Based on the experience of several battles, the demand for these 2 herbs was huge. The small medicine box provided a considerable amount of them. Before they came, the State Preceptor Hall also gave them a large number of self-made pills and ointments. On the way here, Gu Jiao also collected a lot of herbs. The 30 medical officers were very busy in the wounded barracks. Although they didn't directly participate in the battle, in fact, they were at the rear of the battlefield. A steady stream of wounded soldiers was sent there. Like all the cavalrymen, they had experienced a very tiring day and night. Some medical officers couldn't stand it anymore and fell asleep on the ground. Some of them lay on the table and closed their eyes. The medical officers, who could barely stand, it had huge dark circles under their eyes. They changed the dressing of the wounded soldiers, examined them, and operated on them. Go to the city and summon some doctors. After coming out of the wounded barracks, Gu Jiao ordered advisor who replied, yes. The military barracks were very efficient places. Some things couldn't be done in the local government office in 10 days or half a month. In the military barracks, orders must be carried out and results must be carried out. On the first night, advisor who went to the city to summon more than 30 doctors. In addition, the new mayor of the city was decided. His surname was Qian and his name was Wang. He had been the local governor. He was upright, but he wasn't a trusted follower of the Nangong family. Therefore, he hadn't been valued. The Nangong family didn't take him with them when they abandoned the city. Gu Jiao temporarily appointed him as the new mayor of Chuyang City. At about 9 o'clock, Mu Qingchen dragged his tired body back to the barracks. He thought that it would be easy without killing people. He didn't expect that dealing with a group of people, mostly women and children, would be very tiring. His throat was on fire. Gu Jiao leaned against a big tree at the entrance of the barracks. She looked at him with her arms crossed. Well done, Director Mu. Let's continue tomorrow. What, Master? Mu Qingchen asked in a hoarse voice. Yes, Director. The Director of the Women's Federation and the Director of the Sub-District Office, Gu Jiao added in her heart. She looked at him with bright eyes. It's okay. You can go and rest. The way you look at me always makes me feel like something bad is going to happen. However, Mu Qingchen was too tired. He couldn't care less about what Gu Jiao was thinking. He returned to his tent with a gloomy face and immediately fell asleep. For the past 2 days, Gu Jiao did not issue any orders, only allowing the soldiers to recuperate and rest. On the night of the second day, she called the 6 commanders and Mu Qingchen into her tent to discuss with them how to deal with the enemy. A sand table was placed on the table in the center of the tent. On the sand table, there were small wooden plates that represented the military strength and the city. Gu Jiao pointed to a valley at the border of the 2 countries. This is the Swallow Gate Pass. Originally, there was a camp set up in the valley, and there was a checkpoint. In order to facilitate the invasion of the Liang Kingdom's army, the Nangong clan removed the checkpoint, and the defensive measures of the camp were all destroyed. This place could no longer be defended. Therefore, Chuyang City became the first barrier to stop the Liang Kingdom's army. No matter what, we have to defend Chuyang City. Everyone agreed with the young commander's words. Chung Fugui's arm was hanging on his neck with gauze. He gritted his teeth. The Nangong clan's children have no assholes. How could they do such a despicable thing like betraying the country? Don't let me catch them again. Otherwise, I'll kill them all. Li Jin was the calmest among them. He looked at the sand table and pondered for a while before asking, "They will arrive at the Swallow Gate Pass tomorrow." "That's right," Gu Jiao said. "However, they are the same as us. After a long journey, their army is tired. They won't attack the city immediately. They will rest for at least a day. This is our opportunity." Li Jin asked, "Commander, you mean?" Gu Jiao said, "We can't just sit and wait for death. The most optimistic situation is that Chang Wei is willing to take the tens of thousands of captives in the city to fight the enemy with us. The worst result is that the city is on fire." Chung Fugui frowned. "Will Chang Wei take the opportunity to rebel?" Li Jin said, "We can't rule out this possibility." Chung Fugui hurriedly said, "Why don't we just kill him?" Everyone looked at Gu Jiao. They also felt that Chang Wei was a huge threat. It was better to kill him to prevent future troubles. Gu Jiao said seriously, "If it really comes to that and we need to fight with the entire army, I will definitely kill him before we go." Hearing Gu Jiao's words, everyone was relieved. Everyone saw how fierce the young commander was on the battlefield. He would never go back on his words and be soft-hearted. Li Jin said again, "Commander, you said that we can't just sit and wait. Do you already have a plan?" Gu Jiao said, "The Imperial Army will arrive in more than 10 days. We have to delay the attack of the Liang Kingdom's army." Zhang Shiyong, the left commander of the reserve camp, slapped his thigh and said, "I know. Burn their food." Zhou Run, the right commander of the reserve camp, glared at him. "Why do you only know how to burn their food? Who will burn it? You." Zhang Shiyong puffed out his chest and said, "I will go. You are all fighting at the front line, but I can only guard the captives in the reserve camp. I have long wanted to fight with them." Gu Jiao picked up a small wooden tablet and inserted it in the north of Chuyang City. She said, "This is the new city. It just took the initiative to surrender to the Nangong family a few days ago. After the Nangong family left Chuyang City, they should have gone to this place. There are not many guards in the new city. If the Liang Kingdom's food is burned, they will definitely go to the new city to plunder the food. Whether the Nangong family cooperates or is forced to pay tribute, they will not use the food." Li Jin had an epiphany and said with a serious expression, "They will oppress the people and rob them of their wealth." Gu Jiao nodded. Zhang Shiyong also understood. He scratched his head and said, "It seems that we can't burn the Liang Kingdom's food for the time being. But if we don't burn the food, how can we delay their attack?" Gu Jiao's gaze fell on the sand table. "Destroy their siege weapons." The Liang Kingdom's war chariots were very powerful, and the scaling ladders were very fast. But if these important weapons were gone, what would they use to attack the city? Pry with knives? Crawl with their hands? Of course, they could go to the new city to borrow the weapons from the Nangong family or reassemble new weapons. But the former was not powerful enough, and the latter would take too long. In short, it was not good for the Liang Kingdom's siege plan. Chung Fugui praised, "Wonderful. I have only heard of burning food, but this is the first time I have heard of destroying weapons." The main reason was that weapons were not easy to destroy. They burned slowly and could not be cut. Often, they would alert the enemy before they could be cut twice. But now they had a secret weapon that could destroy weapons, Snow Domain Heavenly Silk, which could definitely cut them without leaving a trace. There were a total of 5 pieces of Snow Domain Heavenly Silk, 1 for each person. Including the scouts, there were a total of 11 people. This was a suicide squad. Because it was too dangerous, there was a possibility that they would not be able to return at any time. "I'll go." Chung Fugui stood up and said. Gu Jiao looked at his hanging arm. "You guys won't go tonight."
Zhou Run, Zhang Shiyong, you go and call Wan Rinchong, Zhao Dengfeng, and Li Shan. Then, Gu Jiao picked a few cavalrymen who were good at lightness skill and were not injured in the battle. I'll go too. When she came out of the tent, she met Mu Qingchen, who was walking toward her. Gu Jiao looked past Mu Qingchen and fell on Teacher, who was behind him. Teacher, who touched his nose. Great Madam. Her Highness, the Crown Princess, ordered young Master Mu to protect Her Highness. The truth was that he was worried about Her Highness, so he secretly called Mu Qingchen. No matter how he looked at it, Mu Qingchen's kung fu was the best among these people. He was reliable to block the knife. Okay. Gu Jiao did not refuse. However, before Gu Jiao left, she called someone else. Gu Jiao put her hands behind her back and looked at Sun Takashi, who was lying on the bed. I see that you're recovering well. It's time for you to go out and exercise. Sun Takashi turned around. I won't work for you. Gu Jiao spread her hands. You don't have to work for me, but I can't feed so many rebels for free. Food is very precious. Why don't I kill 180 of them a day and save some food for my cavalrymen? Sun Takashi looked at her coldly. You're despicable. Gu Jiao smiled faintly. You're the most familiar with the terrain of Swallow Gate. You lead the way. If you don't, I'll kill your men right now. Sun Takashi knew that he was facing a young man who killed without batting an eyelid, using his conscience to wake him up and using his reputation to restrain him would not work. In the end, Sun Takashi gritted his teeth and endured the pain from his wound as he accepted Gu Jiao's threat. I want my own horse. Give it to him. Gu Jiao said. Zhou Ren ordered his men to bring his warhorse over. Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes as she watched Sun Takashi get on the horse. Sun Takashi had just undergone surgery, and he could still be so fierce. In order to reduce the sound of their armor rubbing against each other and to better conceal themselves, they all changed into night clothes. Then, a group of people spurred their horses out of the Chuyang city and went all the way to the Yanmen Pass in the west. According to the report from their scouts, the Liang Kingdom's army would be stationed in the valley outside Swallow Gate. Their horses could not get too close, otherwise, the sound of the horses' hooves would reach the camp. The horses can't go any further. Sun Takashi pulled on the reins when they reached a mountain range. They got off their horses. Sun Takashi tied his horse under a big tree. Seeing that Gu Jiao and the others were not moving, he said with a strange expression, Tie the horses, or they'll run away. Cavalry? Don't you know this? Gu Jiao nodded and said seriously, But the Black Wind cavalry doesn't need to be tied. They were very disciplined and never ran around. Sun Takashi. Why did his face suddenly hurt? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that you can't find on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/8964-2_89642826/1057788868. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 841. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. That sentence was not the most fatal. Gu Jiao shrugged and said, Actually, it's fine if you don't tie it up. The Black Wind King will keep an eye on your horse and not let it run around. His own horse had to be tied up to prevent it from getting lost, but other people's horses could not only discipline themselves, but they could also discipline other people, other horses. Soon Takashi felt a blow to his soul. He did not want to talk to this kid anymore. Soon Takashi walked forward with a dark expression. Gu Jiao followed behind him with his head held high. Mu Qingchen cautiously observed the surroundings and also strode forward to catch up. Soon Takashi snorted. "Kid, aren't you afraid that I'll set you up?" Gu Jiao said casually, "If I don't go back, the tens of thousands of captives in Tsuyang City will all die with me. You can calculate that yourself." Soon Takashi gritted his teeth. "How can you be so cruel at such a young age?" Gu Jiao smiled faintly. "Thanks for the compliment." Soon Takashi almost choked on his words. Generals often had bad tempers. This was a double-edged sword. It could stimulate their combat power and fighting spirit on the battlefield. The downside was that they would be easily angered off the battlefield. Soon Takashi was heavily injured. For the sake of his own life, Soon Takashi decided not to talk to him anymore. The group went around a hill and came to a narrow stream. In front of them was the valley where the two countries intersected. The Liang Kingdom's army had set up camp here. They had obviously just arrived and were still tidying up the place. "We'll go after they sleep," Soon Takashi said. "Okay," Gu Jiao replied. Soon Takashi realized that he had used the tone of a general. This cruel kid did not seem to think that there was anything wrong with being ordered around by a captive. He did not get angry or refute. The group lay in the grass behind the rocks. It was late autumn in the 9th month of the lunar calendar. The night wind at the border was chilly. It made their hands and feet feel cold. The ground was cold as well. Mu Qingchen subconsciously touched the back of Gu Jiao's hand and whispered, "Why is it so cold?" "Is it cold?" Gu Jiao didn't feel it. Mu Qingchen wanted to take off his outer robe and give it to her, but he was wearing night clothes. "They're asleep," Gu Jiao suddenly said. Mu Qingchen looked in the direction of the voice and saw that the last group of soldiers from the state of Liang had also entered the tent. Only 100 soldiers were left to patrol in different places. After observing for a while, they had a rough idea of the patrolling route. Seizing a wrong peak, a group of people sneaked into the camp of the Liang army. Their weapons were in the supply camp at the back of the camp, and so were their provisions. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. It was a good time to burn the provisions, but unfortunately, they couldn't. Gu Jiao gestured to the 10 people. Mu Qingchen and the others understood and took out a pair of silver-threaded gloves and put them on. Soon Takashi's mouth twitched when he saw that these people had taken away all his gloves. Gu Jiao took out 5 brocade pouches made of special materials. Each of the pouches contained a long strand of snowfield silk. After distributing the brocade pouches, the group began to move. The scouts and Tsun Takashi were responsible for keeping an eye on the patrolling army. For them who had the snowfield silk, it was not difficult to cut the chariots and ladders. However, the key was to prevent the remaining parts from falling to the ground. Wen Rinchong was good at this. He pointed at a few parts and said, "Cut here. The chariots won't fall apart on the spot." Gu Jiao and Mu Qingchen each pulled one end of the snow domain heavenly silkworm silk. Mu Qingchen used his qing gong to leap to the other side of the war chariot. The two exchanged a look and cut off the silk. It was silent, as if he was cutting the body of a cake. It was extremely smooth. Gu Jiao exclaimed, "Wow." Her obsessive-compulsive disorder was cured. Gu Jiao had a lot of fun. No, the mission was going smoothly. "Someone is coming. Let's retreat." Tsun Takashi said in a low voice. Gu Jiao smacked her lips. "I didn't cut much." Everyone was dumbfounded. There were so many chariots and ladders, but we only cut a little. Some people didn't even have time to cut them, but you took all of them. Let's go. Mu Qingchen leaped over with his lightness skill and returned the snowfield silk to her. Gu Jiao said, "Oh." She slowly put away and cut another part of the chariot when no one was paying attention. Mu Qingchen was speechless. When Dayang's soldiers patrolled, they had already left. Among these people, only Gu Jiao didn't know Qinggong. Mu Qingchen held her soft and slender waist and brought her back and forth between the various large tents. Soon Takashi was injured and could not use lightning skill. Li Shun and Zhao Dengfeng took turns to carry him. When they passed by a tent with a dim oil lamp, Gu Jiao suddenly patted Mu Qingchen's arm and signaled him to stop. Mu Qingchen gently landed on the grass. "What is it?" he asked with his eyes. Gu Jiao pointed at a tent about 10 meters away. "I saw someone go in." The others also stopped beside them. They hid in the dark and looked at the tent that Gu Jiao pointed at. Gu Jiao thought for a while and gestured to the others to leave first. She, Mu Qingchen, Li Shun, and Zhao Dengfeng stayed behind. Although they were unwilling to leave, it was a military order. Zhao Dengfeng, Wenren Cheng, and the others quietly disappeared into the night. Gu Jiao and the others approached the tent. They hid behind the tent. Gu Jiao and the other two put their ears to the tent wall. Li Shun was responsible for keeping an eye on the surroundings. Men's voices came from the tent. They were speaking the language of the Yen Kingdom, but one of them was not very fluent. The one who was not fluent said, "Is this your sincerity? The king of the Yen Kingdom is trying to capture you. Without the protection of the Liang Kingdom, you will soon become his prisoners." Everyone understood. One was a general of the Liang Kingdom, and the other was a rebel army of the Yen Kingdom. It was either the Han clan or the Nangong clan. Obviously, the latter was more likely. "I want to see your General Chu." The others did not recognize the voice, but soon Takashi recognized it immediately. It was the fourth son of the Nangong clan, Nangong Ju. Nangong Zai and Nangong Ju were guarding the border all year round, so Tsun Takashi was very familiar with them. The general of the Liang Kingdom said, "General Chu is tired from the journey. He has already rested." Gu Jiao translated, "Your position is not high enough. Talking to me is already a gift to you." Nangong Ju's aura was tinged with anger, but it was quickly suppressed. "Do you really think the Black Wind Camp is so easy to deal with? I am not afraid to tell you that with your military strength, without the help of the Nangong clan, you will definitely be defeated by Xiao Lulang." Gu Jiao clenched her small fist. Mysterious energy. "I am so awesome." So, he really is from the Nangong clan. Gu Jiao looked at Tsun Takashi sympathetically. No wonder his face turned so ugly. "Look, this is the Yen Kingdom's lord you are loyal to, colluding with the traitor of the Liang Kingdom." The general of the Liang Kingdom said arrogantly, "Don't try to scare me. You lost because you are not capable. Do you think that the Liang Kingdom's army is as useless as the remnants of the Nangong clan? If that General Tsun Takashi comes to the Liang Kingdom, we won't even let him be a chiliarch." Gu Jiao nodded with praise. "Wonderful. Go on, you are an ally tonight." The general of the Liang Kingdom said calmly, "The Liang Kingdom has no need to cooperate with the Nangong clan." Nangong Ju said with cold sweat, "Aren't you just bullying us because we have lost our military strength? But as far as I know, General Tsun Takashi of the Nangong clan is not dead. He was only captured and is being treated in Tsuyang City. There are nearly 60,000 soldiers in Tsuyang City. As long as Tsun Takashi leads them to cooperate with you, the Liang Kingdom's plan to attack the city will be twice the result with half the effort." Gu Jiao looked at Tsun Takashi sympathetically again. Tsun Takashi looked calm on the surface, but the blood seeping out of his chest betrayed his emotions. The general of the Liang Kingdom seemed to be interested in this proposal, but he held back his bargaining chip and tried his best to negotiate. "Tsun Takashi deserves to die, but he is not dead. How can you be sure that he did not join the Black Wind Camp?" Nangong Ju said with certainty, "Tsun Takashi will not betray the Nangong clan." The general of the Liang Kingdom smiled. "Oh," Nangong Ju said sarcastically, "he came from a poor family. When my father met him, he was begging on the street. It was my father who picked him up, took him in, and let him join the army. He is stubborn, and inflexible. But fortunately, he is loyal to the Nangong clan. He can be said to be the most loyal dog of the Nangong clan. Wherever the Nangong clan points, he will bite. Even if his body is broken, he will not hesitate. Gu Jiao almost rushed forward to give Nangong Ju flowers. Well said. Tonight's friendly army belongs to you. If it was in the past, Nangong Ju would not say such arrogant words in front of outsiders. But now, he was angered by the arrogant attitude of the general of the Liang Kingdom. He needed to look down on others to regain his dignity and show that he was superior. Unfortunately, the speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Outside the tent, Tsun Takashi's face turned completely green. Digression. Gulp gulp, we are all allies. Let's have a drink. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_896422826/105778354. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhpqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhpqg.com. Chapter 842. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are available here. On the way back, Tsun Takashi did not say a word. Wen Rinchong and Zhao Dengfeng saw Tsun Takashi's expression and kept signaling Li Shun with their eyes. Li Shun could not say anything in front of Tsun Takashi, so he could only ignore his companion's eyes. The group arrived at the hill where the war horses were parked. The untethered Black Wind cavalry was standing there perfectly fine. On the other hand, Tsun Takashi's war horse's rope was broken. However, under Black Wind King's suppression, it did not dare to go anywhere. A wild beast came here, Gu Jiao said as he looked at the footprints on the ground. Being untethered had its benefits. The Black Wind cavalry could fight together. If they were tied up, they would only be bitten to death by the wild beasts. Are you hurt? Gu Jiao patted Black Wind King's neck and asked. Black Wind King raised his head and snorted. It seemed like he was fine. 11 Black Wind cavalry was not a joke. Even if it was a wolf, it would have been driven away. Tsun Takashi's horse was a little frightened, but Black Wind King had already calmed it down. In the past, everyone only saw Black Wind King's power as a ruler. However, this time, everyone felt another side of Black Wind King, a side that had never been seen in Hanye's hands. The group leaped onto their horses. Gu Jiao sighed and said, "Don't be so dejected. Maybe he doesn't really think that way. He's just saying it out of anger." This was the right way to persuade him. The more he persuaded, the angrier he got. Tsun Takashi snorted coldly. He whipped his horse and charged into the night. Zhao Dengfeng finally could not help but ask, "What happened? Was he beaten up by someone?" Li Shun did not speak much. He ignored Zhao Dengfeng. Mu Qingchen was not familiar with Zhao Dengfeng, so he did not speak either. Zhao Dengfeng then looked at the junior commander. The junior commander sighed exaggeratedly. Sigh, he was beaten up by scum. His heart is broken. Zhao Dengfeng. Everyone, Zhao Dengfeng and the rest chased after Tsun Takashi. What if he wanted to escape? Mu Qingchen and Gu Jiao brought up the rear. The two walked at a moderate pace. Mu Qingchen said, "I can't guess who the general of the Liang Kingdom is, but the one from the Nangong clan seems to be the fourth son, Nangong Ju." Gu Jiao said, "Yeah, I think it's him too." He said, "My father brought Tsun Takashi back. That father should be the head of the Nangong family." The head of the Nangong family had a total of 4 sons, and Nangong Chung was the eldest. His martial arts were not proficient, so the Nangong family would not allow him to take the risk to come here in the middle of the night. The second son, Nangong Li, was dead, but the third son, Nangong Zhe, didn't sound like that. Right now, only his fourth son, Nangong Ju, still had full combat power. Mu Qingchen asked, "Should we kill him?" Gu Jiao glanced at him. "Are you used to killing people now?" Mu Qingchen lowered his eyes and said, "You have to get used to it." Gu Jiao was very satisfied. As expected of young Master Qingchen, he improved rapidly. Gu Jiao said he won't come out tonight, so we can't kill him. Let's wait for the duel. After the group returned to the barracks in Tsuyang City, soon Takashi went straight to his camp for wounded soldiers. The medical officer felt a gust of wind blow past him, and he immediately woke up from his sleep. He shuddered and looked at Tsun Takashi, who had almost smashed himself onto the bed, and then looked at the junior commander outside. He quickly walked out and asked, "Commander, is he okay?" Gu Jiao said, "He's fine. Don't worry about him and don't ask too much. Just use the medicine as usual." "Yes," the medical officer replied. Everyone returned to their own tents, and the medical officer went to take care of the other patients. Soon Takashi lay alone on the bed with a thick mattress, and his body was cold. He came from a poor family. When my father met him, he was begging on the street. He's stubborn, self-opinionated, and inflexible. He's the most loyal dog that our Nangong family has raised. As long as Tsun Takashi leads them to work with you from the inside, your plan to attack the city will be twice the result with half the effort. Just because you're useless and lost, you think that our Liang army is as useless as your Nangong family's remaining soldiers? If that General Tsun Takashi comes to our Liang, we won't even let him be a chiliarch." Tsun Takashi clenched his fists bit by bit, and his body trembled violently. His wounds burst open, and blood seeped out from the bandages, dyeing his entire shirt red. The Liang army only discovered the abnormality of the military equipment the next morning. It was drizzling at the border, and a few soldiers from the supply camp went to wipe the rainwater off the chariots. As soon as they touched the chariots collapsed with a boom. The few of them were stunned. The huge commotion alerted the deputy general of the supply camp. The deputy general checked the rest of the chariots, and without exception, all of them collapsed. Not only that, but the ladders they used to climb up the city walls were also broken into pieces. This was a major accident in the barracks. The deputy general of the supply camp immediately reported to the few generals. When Chu Feiping came to the scene, he touched the smooth cut on the chariot with his fingertips, and his eyes turned cold. Snow domain heavenly silk. The general next to him said, "General, this," Chu Feiping said indifferently, "looks like someone came here last night." The general immediately knelt down on one knee. "I failed in my duty." Chu Feiping looked at the direction of Tsuyang City. Nangong Ju is right. The Black Wind cavalry of Great Yen is not easy to deal with. The plan to attack the city will have to be postponed. Tell the Nangong family that I agree to their conditions. After losing their military equipment, the Liang army spent a total of 8 days to transport new ladders and chariots from other cities. This was another huge amount of manpower and material resources, and it also slightly shook the morale of the army. But it didn't matter. The Great Yen was surrounded by wolves, and the Liang was not the only enemy. The other 5 kingdoms were also crazily nibbling on this fat piece of meat. Sooner or later, the Great Yen would fall completely. On the 18th of September, in the evening, the west wind was strong. General Song Kai of the Liang led 20,000 vanguard soldiers and launched the first wave of attack toward the west gate of Tsuyang City. Last night, Chang Wei received an order from the Nangong family. As the Nangong family had taken root in Tsuyang City for a long time, naturally, they still had spies in the city. One of them disguised himself as a food delivery vendor and sneaked into the military camp. Then came to the tent where Chang Wei was recuperating. He showed Chang Wei a token hidden in his sleeve, then said, "Clan Master has given an order. If the Liang army is going to attack the city later, you are to command your men to charge out and annihilate the Black Wind Battalion." Chang Wei responded calmly, So Clan Master is asking me to help the enemy and commit treason? The vendor said, the Emperor of Great Yen is heartless, and this is a strategy to drive the tiger to devour the wolf. Of course, Clan Master will not commit treason. Once we take down the Black Wind Battalion, Clan Master will ask you to lead the army and drive the Liang army out of Great Yan's border. Chang Wei lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, is that so? The vendor smiled and said, of course, Clan Master is wholeheartedly serving the people of Great Yen, and his sincerity can be witnessed by heaven and earth. Since Clan Master has entrusted General Chang with such an important task, it not only shows his trust in General Chang, but also his high regard for General Chang. General Chang, please don't disappoint Clan Master. After all, you are the most trusted retainer of Nangong Clan. Chang Wei looked at the vendor with a serious face. Clan Master, is that how you see me? Don't you think that I'm just a lackey of Nangong Clan? The vendor sighed. Why would General Chang think so? Did you hear some rumors? Ah, General Chang, you have been brought back to the border by Clan Master for many years. But have you ever seen Clan Master do anything to betray the people? Yes, it's wrong to abandon the city and flee, but this is also for the sake of the big picture. Don't forget who saved your life back then. Without Clan Master, you can't be ungrateful. After the vendor left, Chang Wei went to the place where the prisoners of war were kept for the first time. They were stripped of their armors and weapons, but not a single one of them suffered any form of abuse. They ate whatever the Black Wind Cavalry ate. Not a single meal was left out. The wounded soldiers were all treated in time, and the bodies of the dead soldiers were not damaged. They were all sewn up by a coroner, so that they could be buried with dignity. The iron plates were also kept with Teacher Hu. Chang Wei went to Teacher Hu and asked for the iron plates of the soldiers back. When everyone saw Chang Wei again, it was when the Liang Kingdom's army arrived at the city. Chang Wei stood on the city gate tower in the west wind, wearing a shining armor and holding a big bow in his hand. In front of the Liang army's camp, Song Kai slowly rode his horse to the front of the army. He stood on the empty battlefield and looked up at Chang Wei, who was on the city tower. He smiled and said in the Yen language that was not very authentic, "You must be General Chang Wei. It seems like we don't have to fight this battle anymore. The Nangong family has already taken back Ziyang City." Before he could finish, Chang Wei drew his bow and shot an arrow through his shoulder. The huge force threw Song Kai off the horse's back. Song Kai screamed and fell heavily to the ground. He clutched his injured arm and looked at Tsun Takashi in disbelief. "You with the surname Chang. Are you crazy?" Chang Wei waved his hand and hundreds of archers appeared on the city gate tower. They drew their bows and aimed at the Liang Kingdom's army. These people were not the Black Wind Cavalry of Shangdu. They were the Nangong clan's army. Chang Wei looked at Song Kai coldly and said, "Didn't you say that our Ziyang City's army is useless? How does it feel to be shot by a useless person like me?" "When did I say that?" Song Kai's pupils shrank. Yes, he did say that. In front of Nangongju, he mocked the Nangong clan's army that lost to the Black Wind Cavalry as a bunch of useless people. How did Chang Wei know? Did Nangongju tell him? No, that's impossible. Nangongju would not do that. Could it be? Song Kai's eyes turned cold. "You were the one who destroyed the military equipment that night." Chang Wei did not explain that he was not the one who did it. There was no point in talking nonsense with such a person. Chang Wei sneered. "My strength is indeed not good, but it's more than enough to deal with you, you bastards from Liang Kingdom. Now open your eyes wide and watch how we, this bunch of useless people, chase you out of Liang Kingdom's borders." Song Kai endured the pain coming from his arm as an ominous premonition surged in his heart. What is this guy trying to do? Tsun Takashi looked down at the Liang Kingdom's army and said, "Archers, fire." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more interesting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that you can't find online are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_89642826/1057591114. HTML Genius memorized this website's address: www.zhbqg.com. Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website: zhbqg.com. Chapter 843. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. Arrows that blotted out the sky pierced through the sky, emitting soul-shaking whistles. With an unstoppable momentum, they interweaved into a dense rain of arrows in the sky. After the first row of archers finished shooting, they quickly retreated and reloaded. The archers in the back row stepped forward from the gap and mercilessly shot the arrows in their hands. A total of 3 rows of archers cooperated well. Not only did they have no gaps in their attacks, but they also allowed their arm strength to recover fully. The rain of arrows fell into the frontmost camp of the Liang army. The Liang army hurriedly raised their shields to defend. However, the shields could only block one side. They could block the front, but not the front. The arrows came from different angles, but there would always be one that could enter the gap and hit the body of the Liang army. After the first round of arrows was shot, dozens of people from the Liang army fell. Tsun Takashi continued to attack. The archers pulled their bows until sparks flew. The terrifying sound of the arrows piercing through the air resounded throughout the city tower. For a moment, the Liang army screamed and wailed. After 3 rounds of attack, the number of people in the Liang army who were shot had reached 100. For the Liang army that had 20,000 vanguard troops, the sacrifice of 100 people might not be a big deal. However, if it happened in a flash, it would be a very serious situation, especially when the enemy did not lose a single soldier. They only wasted some arrows. Song Kai felt the pressure from the Tsuyoung army. What was going on? Wasn't Tsun Takashi the confidant of the Nangong family? Why did he start a war with the Liang army? Could it be that the Nangong family was pretending to ask for peace that night, but in fact it was to attract their attention so that Tsun Takashi could destroy the military equipment? Had the Nangong family been toying with the Liang army from the beginning? Song Kai narrowed his cold eyes. No matter what, since Tsun Takashi dared to start a war with the Liang army, then he could not blame them for turning hostile. He broke the arrow on his shoulder and shouted. He used his internal energy to send out his voice clearly. Everyone, do not panic. Listen to my orders. Vanguard left camp. Get into formation. Flying crane formation. The flying crane formation was a formation created by the divine general of the Liang kingdom, Chu Feipeng. It used the shield as the sky to form a defensive formation. Because it looked like a flying crane from above, it got its name. A single shield could only cover a limited area, but when all the shields were put together, they formed an impenetrable iron roof. The front was also blocked by the shields. There was nowhere for the arrow to hit. However, if they thought that this was all Tsun Takashi had up his sleeves, they would be too naive. Catapults. Tsun Takashi ordered. The archers retreated to the side in a well-trained manner, and the catapults were quickly pushed to the edge of the city tower by the soldiers. They loaded the stones, pressed them down, and fired. Their movements were neat and orderly. Some of the generals of the Black Wind Battalion were also present. Chung Fugue's mouth was wide open, and he couldn't close it for a long time. These soldiers. Not bad. Back then, when the Black Wind Cavalry killed them all, he thought that these rebels were useless. Gu Jiao said, "It's just a matter of specialization. They might not be a match for us in close combat, but when it comes to defending the city, they are kings." Tsuyoung City was impregnable. Not only were the city walls and city gates sturdy, but the defensive tactics were also impenetrable. If Zhao Kingdom had such a force in Yuelu City, it would not have been so difficult to defend the city. Gu Jiao was relieved when he saw this. Although the Liang Kingdom's army had a large number of soldiers, as long as the city gates were not opened and the city tower did not collapse, they would not be able to break through Tsun Takashi's defense. 2 hours later, the Liang Kingdom's army had lost nearly 1,000 soldiers. The general's order came from the rear. Song Kai gritted his teeth unwillingly and retreated. In the first wave of attack, they did not even get close to the city walls. Although they used the catapults a few times, Tsun Takashi's attack was too fierce. They could not get close to the catapults, and they wasted more than 10 heavy stones. The Liang Kingdom's army rested for 4 hours, and they launched the second wave of attack at night. This time, they came prepared. They used extremely sturdy shields to push the chariots dozens of feet forward. Their catapults finally worked and caused some damage to the soldiers on the city tower. Tsun Takashi used the black gunpowder. The Yen Kingdom did not have a large amount of saltpeter mines, so the raw materials for the black gunpowder were very limited. It was difficult to use it for military purposes. Tsun Takashi used all his trump cards. The explosive power was not enough, so he used knockout drugs to make up for it. The Liang Kingdom's army was pushed back again. Song Kai's face was covered in dirt. He was so angry that he was about to explode. He dragged his injured arm and rode on his horse. He pulled out his sword and pointed at the city tower. "Chang, come down and fight me if you have the guts. What kind of man are you if you keep hiding on the city tower?" Tsun Takashi only replied with 2 words. "Release the arrows." Song Kai was only able to avoid being turned into a hedgehog by sacrificing himself to protect him. In the middle of the night, Song Kai did not give up and launched a sneak attack. However, he was defeated by Tsun Takashi, who had already seen through everything. The first day, a perfect defense. The soldiers were quite happy. The confidence that was destroyed by the Black Wind cavalry seemed to have recovered. Everyone was in high spirits. They were the Nangong family soldiers after all. The reason why they obeyed Tsun Takashi was because the Nangong family had always thought highly of them. Now that the Nangong family was not in the city, Tsun Takashi had become the backbone. Naturally, they would listen to whatever he said. Tsun Takashi came down from the city tower and saw Gu Jiao by the roadside. Gu Jiao crossed her arms and leaned her right shoulder lazily on the city wall. "Well done, old Chang." Tsun Takashi glanced at her coldly and said, "I'm not that close to you. Also, I'm doing this for the people in the city. I'm not working with you." Gu Jiao shrugged. "It doesn't matter, as long as you don't work with the Liang Kingdom." She raised her hand and yawned. "It's getting late. I'm going to rest. I'll leave the defense of the city to General Chang." Tsun Takashi frowned as he watched her leave. In the end, he did not stop her and went to the temporary casualty camp to visit the soldiers who were injured today. When he went in, the Nangong family's medical officer told him that a few soldiers who were seriously injured were saved by the Black Wind Cavalry's junior commander. He was busy in the casualty camp for as long as the battle on the city tower ended. He only left when it was over. "Got it," Tsun Takashi said. In the next 3 days, the Liang Kingdom's army launched more than 10 attacks at the western city gate. Tsun Takashi blocked all of them with great skill. There were provisions that Gu Jiao stole from Nangong Zhe in the city. It would not be a problem for them to fight for another 10 days to half a month. Moreover, they did not have to hold on for that long. The 120,000 soldiers from the imperial court would arrive in 5 days at the earliest and 7 days at the latest. The situation in Tsuyang City was good. However, just as everyone was waiting for victory with joy, an accident happened. The northern city gate collapsed. It was not attacked by the Liang Kingdom's army. It was destroyed by a Nangong family's confidant who was hiding in the city. He used gunpowder to blow up the door from the inside. The confidant was a soldier in the army. He was guarding the northern city gate. It was his turn to be on duty that night. No one expected him to do such a thing. The moment the northern city gate collapsed, everyone rushed forward to capture him. However, he had already ignited the signal of fireworks. What's that? In the military camp, Chung Fugue looked at the fireworks in the night sky. It's so beautiful. Li Jin frowned and said, it's coming from the north of the city. Tong Zhong was puzzled. Did something happen at the northern city gate? Li Jin said, I don't know what this signal means. Quickly send someone to check it out. They did not know what it meant. However, Tsun Takashi knew very well that this was a signal that the city gate had been breached. The Liang Kingdom's army was outside the western city, who breached the northern city gate. Could it be there was a spy? Tsun Takashi's heart skipped a beat. Gu Jiao was bandaging the wounds of the injured soldiers in the barracks. When she heard the commotion outside, she quickly went up the city gate tower and asked Tsun Takashi what happened. Tsun Takashi said with a serious expression, the northern city gate has been breached. Gu Jiao was puzzled. Breached? No army is heading to the northern city gate. Tsun Takashi judged based on his past experience. Yes, no. So, the situation might be more serious. As soon as he finished speaking, a soldier at the side pointed at the Liang Kingdom's army camp and shouted, they've retreated. Gu Jiao looked and her eyes turned cold. They're not retreating. They're heading to the northern city gate. The Liang Kingdom's army was about to attack the northern city gate. Gu Jiao and Tsun Takashi rushed downstairs. Gu Jiao whistled and the Black Wind King galloped over. Gu Jiao took a big step forward and nimbly mounted the horse. Tsun Takashi called for a deputy general and put him in charge of the defense of the western city gate. He rode his horse and chased after Gu Jiao to the northern city gate. When the two of them were halfway there, they met the soldier who came to report. The soldier cupped his hands and said, General Chang, bad news. The northern city gate has fallen. Tsun Takashi said, speak clearly. The soldier said, that bastard Zhang Damon destroyed the door mortar while he was on duty. The door mortar was equivalent to the door binder of the modern world. Without it, the door could not be fixed. The door mortar of Tsuyang City was made of stone and was integrated with the entire city gate. Once it was destroyed, it was impossible to repair it. They could only build a new one. However, that was not something that could be done in a day or two. Tsun Takashi realized the seriousness of the situation. They could deal with the Liang Kingdom's army because they had the advantage of the city wall. If the Liang Kingdom's army took the opportunity to enter the city, the consequences would be unimaginable. The soldiers at the other three city gates could not be withdrawn because their enemies were not only the Liang Kingdom's army, but also the Han family and Jin Kingdom. Therefore, there were less than 20,000 soldiers who could go to the western city gate to fight. Gu Jiao said calmly, General Chang, go back and guard the western city gate. Leave the northern city gate to the Black Wind Cavalry. Tsun Takashi opened his mouth. But Gu Jiao held the reins tightly and looked at the northern city. From now on, the Black Wind Cavalry's flesh and blood will be the gate of the northern city. Digression. She rubbed her small hands and wanted to ask for a wave of monthly votes for the Black Wind Cavalry. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964/2_89642_1057570504. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikaj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 844. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app.
Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet can be found here. Gu Jiao and Black Wind King returned to the barracks. In fact, the Black Wind Cavalry had already heard the news that the North Gate had been destroyed. The entire army was already prepared and ready to go. The soldiers and their horses were all equipped with armor, and each one of them held a spear or a sword in their hand. They stood on the west wind's biting cold training ground. Gu Jiao didn't ask who was the leader. Perhaps she didn't need to ask. They didn't fight for the military uniform. Instead, they had to fight for honor, for their country, and for the common people after donning the military uniform. As long as they were still alive, no one could step on the rivers of the great Yan dynasty. To be honest, when Mu Qingchen saw this scene, he was also very shocked. He had been with the army for more than a month. He always thought that he knew enough about the soldiers of the great Yan dynasty. But in the end, his knowledge was still too superficial. What kind of feelings could be sacrificed to this extent? Gu Jiao sat on the back of the Black Wind King's horse. Looking at the majestic Black Wind Cavalry, she said with a solemn expression, "Very good. Vanguard Battalion, Assault Battalion, follow me to battle. Garrison Battalion, get ready to fight." Mu Qingchen's heart skipped a beat. Even the Garrison Battalion was going to fight? Zhou Run and Zhang Shiyong heard this, and their hearts surged. They finally had a chance to go to the battlefield. But in the next second, their arms that were waving in the air froze. They were not afraid of death. But if even they were going to fight, it meant that the situation had deteriorated to an inestimable extent. This battle might be the battle of the Black Wind Cavalry survival. Gu Jiao looked at the reserve battalion. "I hope you won't be needed." If they were needed, then the Vanguard Battalion and Assault Battalion would all be killed. In the dream of war, the Liang Kingdom and the Black Wind Cavalry did fight a fierce battle. The Black Wind Cavalry, which was depleted by the Civil War, had less than 20,000 soldiers left. They were surrounded by the Liang Kingdom's army in the mountains of Mount Mang. They were completely wiped out. Gu Jiao held the reins tightly and urged the horse to walk on the deserted street. This time, could she change the fate of the Black Wind Cavalry? Mu Qingchen urged his horse to keep up with her. Every city gate in Chuyang City has 3 gates, but one of them is broken. Gu Jiao said, "No, all 3 channels are broken." The innermost gate had its mortar blown off. There was another gate and a secret door. The rebels had also destroyed the corresponding slots. Are all 3 gates broken? No wonder they couldn't hold on. Mu Qingchen frowned. "Snow Domain, Heavenly Silkworm Silk." Gu Jiao said plainly, "No, Chu Feiping has gloves that can deal with the Snow Domain's Heavenly Silkworm Silk." Mu Qingchen took a deep look at her. "You seem to know a lot about the Liang Kingdom." "Sort of." Gu Jiao did not explain. Her ears twitched as she looked in the direction of the North City Gate. "We have to speed up. They're almost here." She tightened her grip on the horse's belly, and Black Wind King sensed her command. It leaped forward and galloped forward. Mu Qingchen was about to follow when a courageous citizen opened the door and walked out. "Young Master Mu, are we going to war?" Mu Qingchen held the reins tightly, in order not to block the army behind. He hurriedly urged his horse to move to the side. He said to the citizen who had heard his preaching before, "Yes, the Liang Kingdom's army is invading. The North City Gate has been destroyed by the remnants of the Nangong family. Now Lord Xiao is leading the Black Wind Cavalry to the North City Gate to meet the enemy." As he spoke, he looked at the citizens who stuck their heads out to look at him. He pursed his lips and said, "Everyone go back quickly. Don't come out if there's nothing important." The citizens said worriedly. Then Chuyang City, Mu Qingchen looked at the young man who was leading the army and said seriously, "You have to believe in Lord Xiao. He will definitely protect Chuyang City." "Sigh, he's still a child." An old man sighed while leaning on his walking stick. Everyone was silent. Yes, the young commander of the Black Wind Battalion was said to be a teenager.
At such a young age, he was already going to fight the enemy. It was laughable that they had once suspected him of being a rebel. But which rebel in the world would use his own flesh and blood to protect the lives of the citizens in the face of life and death? When the tens of thousands of Liang Kingdom's army arrived at the North City Gate, the Black Wind Cavalry had already lined up neatly to welcome them. The two sides were separated by 10 feet, which happened to be within the effective shooting range of the archers. The shields and archers of both sides were already in position. The battle was about to begin. Gu Jiao took the lead and stood at the front of the Black Wind Cavalry. She was wearing her battle suit and armor, while the Black Wind King was also wearing a black helmet and armor. One person and one horse stood under the vast sky. Standing in front of the majestic army, they were as small as a grain of sand in the vast ocean. However, it was this 16-year-old warhorse and the 16-year-old youth who led the Black Wind Cavalry fearlessly in front of the Liang Kingdom's army. "Kid, you're Xiao Lulang, the commander of the Black Wind Cavalry? I heard you're very powerful." In front of the camp of the state of Liang, a burly general of the state of Liang, holding a mace, urged his horse forward a few steps. He looked at Gu Jiao with his nose in the air. "Do you dare to fight with me? A one-on-one?" This was also a way for the two armies to start a war. Mu Qingchen urged his horse to Gu Jiao's side. "He's called Pan Long. He's a fierce general under Chu Feipeng. I once followed my grandfather to the Liang Kingdom and saw him in the main hall. This person has a violent temperament and is extremely cruel. The prisoners of war who fall into his hands usually don't have a good ending." This was a euphemism. Pan Long was famous for torturing prisoners of war in the army. After the war, it was not uncommon for him to burn, kill, rob, and humiliate innocent women. His subordinates also did the same. However, this person was indeed brave, so he was somewhat valued. Li Jin cupped his fist and said, "Commander, let me go and meet him." Gu Jiao looked in Pan Long's direction. "Okay." Li Jin's weapon was a spear. He held a spear in one hand and a shield in the other. He urged his horse to rush towards Pan Long. Pan Long saw this and frowned in dissatisfaction. He raised the mace in his hand. "I want to beat that brat. Not some random shrimp soldier or crab general. Get out of my way." He also urged his horse to rush towards Li Jin. The moment he finished speaking, he raised the spiked mace in his hand and fiercely swung it towards Li Jin's head. Li Jin didn't have time or something else. He didn't have a shield and directly stabbed his spear towards Pan Long's heart. The two horses brushed past each other. The entire battlefield was silent. Only the whistling of the wind and the whistling of the horses' hooves could be heard. Li Jin's horse circled around and stopped just in time. The Liang Kingdom's army looked at Pan Long's back. The next second, Pan Long's body tilted, and his eyes stared blankly as he fell into a pool of blood. Li Jin looked in the direction of the Liang Kingdom's army and said arrogantly, "Ah, so you Liang Kingdom's generals can't even beat our Black Wind Cavalry." The Black Wind Cavalry burst into loud cheers. The Liang Kingdom's army's expression became very ugly. They originally wanted to show their strength to the Black Wind Cavalry, but who would have thought that they would be defeated in seconds? "Is there anyone else who wants to duel?" Li Jin asked coldly. "Young man, don't be too arrogant." An old general in his 50s rushed towards Li Jin with a treasured sword in his hand. His strength was above Pan Long's. When the blade slashed over, Li Jin clearly felt a strong pressure. Li Jin frowned and raised the shield in his hand. With a clang, the blade heavily hit the shield. Half of Li Jin's arm was numb. Mu Qingchen continued to introduce to Gu Jiao. Liang Kingdom's old General Cheng participated in the crusade against the Yan Kingdom and fought against the Xianyuan family. He is one of the few generals who can last more than 100 moves against Xianyuan Li. Li Jin's chances of winning against him are not high. Li Jin was not even 30 this year and was a very young general. There was at least 20 years of experience between him and old General Cheng. This was actually a bit of a bully. But Li Jin was also far more tenacious than people imagined. Old General Cheng's sword slashed at his shield again and again. His arm was already green, but he still did not have the slightest intention of yielding. Finally, he found an opportunity. He suddenly stabbed towards old General Cheng's thigh. In the Liang Kingdom's camp, a cold light flashed. Gu Jiao's eyes turned cold. She suddenly picked up the longbow on the horse's back, drew an arrow, and shot it at the cold light. Who is it? Old General Cheng blocked Li Jin's attack with his sword and turned his head to look. Beside the two of them, an arrow nailed a dagger to the ground. The arrow was shot by the Black Wind Cavalry. As for the dagger, there was no need to talk about it. Old General Cheng's face was green as he asked his own camp, who did it? Gu Jiao held the bow and said indifferently, I thought it would be a fair duel. Unexpectedly, Yuliang Kingdom's people are so shameless. Since that is the case, there is no need for a duel. Li Jin returned to the camp. Yes. Li Jin kept his spear and rode the Black Wind Cavalry back to his camp. So close. Just now Li Jin seemed to have caught the Liang Kingdom's old general's flaw. In fact, the Liang Kingdom's old general had purposely lured him into the trap. It was really lucky that the Liang Kingdom's side did not see through it and thought that their old general was going to lose, so they took the opportunity to sneak attack Li Jin. And she just happened to use this as an excuse to end the duel between the two. The general who had sneak attacked just now walked out. It was Song Kai. He snorted and said, Uncle Chung, why waste your time talking with them? Let's fight. Since things had come to this, there was indeed no face to continue fighting one-on-one. Old General Chung gave the order to charge. Gu Jiao raised her voice, Black Wind Cavalry, fight with all your might. The archers from both sides launched the first wave of attack. Under the protection of the archers, the first group of cavalry began to charge and break through the enemy lines. The Liang Kingdom's army had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. They were fighting a war of attrition. Even if they had to exhaust the Black Wind Cavalry, they had to exhaust them to death. Moreover, the strength of their cavalry was not weak. There were many imperial death warriors mixed in. These death warriors did not fight with the ordinary Black Wind Cavalry. They specialized in harvesting the heads of the generals. In the blink of an eye, 3 of the Black Wind Cavalry's deputy generals fell. One of the death warriors stared at Cheng Fugui and kicked him off his horse. Just at this moment, a war horse did not have time to stop in time. Cheng Fugui's eyebrows twitched and he hurriedly rolled to avoid it. On the other side, Li Jin was also targeted by 2 death warriors. The 2 of them attacked from both sides, and Li Jin's thigh was quickly injured. The death warrior slashed his sword towards Li Jin's head. Gu Jiao used her spear to deflect his sword. At the same time, the Black Wind King raised his horse's hoof and fiercely stomped on the death warrior's chest. The death warrior was caught off guard and was sent flying. He fell onto the hooves of another Black Wind Cavalry. He raised his sword to chop off the hooves of the horse. Gu Jiao shot out her red-tasseled spear and mercilessly pierced through his heart. Gu Jiao urged her horse to pull out her red-tasseled spear. She turned around and shot out another spear. It directly pierced through the head of another death warrior. His brain splattered all over Cheng Fugui's face. Cheng Fugui's entire person was stunned. The death warriors of the Liang Kingdom all felt an incomparably terrifying aura. They, who never knew what fear was, suddenly felt a chill run down their spine. They subconsciously looked in the direction of the dangerous aura and saw a young man dressed in red clothes and profound armor staring at them calmly. It was this calmness that made people feel an inexplicable sense of danger. It was as if endless killing was as normal as breathing in the eyes of this youth. From the moment they were stared at by this youth, they were no longer the death warriors of the Liang Kingdom. They were just a prey chosen by the killing god. The death warriors fell one by one. The youth's eyes remained calm. In the camp of the Liang Kingdom's army, several generals who were witnessing this scene all frowned. A general in his early 30s who was holding a silver spear muttered, "What is going on? That kid. How is he so powerful? Is he really only 19 years old? Beside him, a young swordsman crossed his arms and said, "It's fake. He is not even 19 years old. According to people who have seen him, he is at most 16 or 17 years old." The Silver Spear General said, "Then how is he able to kill without blinking?" This was truly killing without blinking. Even his emotions did not fluctuate at all. 20 death warriors. He killed half of them in an instant. This youth's strength was too terrifying. The Silver Spear General was talking when his eyes suddenly widened. He is gone. Is he dead? The young swordsman narrowed his eyes slightly. Dead? The Silver Spear General's pupils shrank. Not good. He is coming this way. Gu Jiao said, "Left wing, cover him." Yes. Tong Zhong immediately adjusted the battle formation and covered Gu Jiao to open a bloody path. Mu Qingchen covered Gu Jiao's right wing. When the generals of the Liang Kingdom noticed something strange, Gu Jiao had already arrived in front of their formation. "Stop him!" The Silver Spear General yelled. A row of soldiers with long swords swarmed toward Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao pulled the reins tightly. "Boss!" Black Wind King mustered all his strength and leaped over everyone's heads. Everyone was stunned. They had never seen such a strong and fast horse. It was terrifying. Black Wind King galloped forward and knocked away all the soldiers in his way without fear of death. The young swordsman turned around and took a closer look. Not good. He is heading toward father. Gu Jiao rode on the back of a horse, as if she had merged with Black Wind King's strength. She was invincible in the camp of the Liang Kingdom's army. In the dream about her ending, Jing Kong was killed by Chu Feipeng. Chu Feipeng killed the last of the Yen Kingdom's Black Wind Cavalry. If she killed Chu Feipeng, the tragedy of Jing Kong and the Black Wind Cavalry would not happen again, right? Today's battle would be over, right? Stop him. Don't let him get close to the general. The Liang Kingdom's army was getting denser and denser. Black Wind King's gallop became more and more difficult. Hang in there, boss. She was almost there. She saw the man in the carriage. She held onto the saddle with one hand and used the momentum to fly up, stabbing the carriage with her spear. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that you can't find on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896426/1057374718. HTML Genius memorized this website's address. www.zhbqg.com Biku Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com that you're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.